Hello, everybody. Welcome to Frame Trap. Long time no see. We're coming to you on a Friday because I was on vacation.
Welcome back.
For 2 weeks. Yeah. And I actually want to start talking about vacation because I've been thinking a lot about vacations and how useful they can be. But with me today, over at the end there, is Daniel Bloodworth.
Hello.
Got a big notebook of games.
Yeah.
Daniel, you are always the most prepared.
Okay.
You like, and I mean that in a good way. I'm sure the audience knows this as well, but it's always encouraging to me when I'm starting a show and it's like, no, he's got stuff to talk about. I probably won't need to reach here.
I like to shoot from the hip.
Yeah.
I like to just,
You're good at that, though.
Go on my raw instincts.
There are some allies that are really good at shooting from the hip. There are some allies that are good prepared. I would say you and Kyle are hip shooters.
Nice.
You like shooting at each other sometimes, too.
This is true.
You're dueling pistols. But right there in the middle of talking, Brandon Jones, the hip shooter. How you doing?
Excellent.
Brandon, I
love Frame Trap. I get excited to be on Frame Trap because I like talking about games. I like having that specific avenue to be like, wait a minute. I like to prepare things for Frame Trap. It's always on my mind.
Yeah.
Like I'll be in the process of playing a game I really enjoy and we'll think about Frame Trap because I'm like, oh, gotta package that experience and get input.
Yeah, a lot of times just because of the nature of our work, we end up talking about recent releases, but I like that we don't have to. You can just come to me and you'll be like, hey, I've been playing Final Fantasy VI. It can be whatever. And so I think that's what makes me excited to shoot Frame Trap, is it's just like, no, this is what I want to talk about the most, whether that's new releases, old releases, whatever it is, or hear Huber wrestling stories sometimes. But I'm your host, Ben Moore, and like I said at the very beginning, I took a vacation. And I don't want to be too self-indulgent, but man, that vacation was really good for me. It was really good.
Yeah. You're always stacked up with like 20 games, so hopefully,
yeah. No, I am. But that's the thing is, since Easy Allies has started, I've been kind of stacked up with 20 games, which is my own fault. But it's just kind of been a sprint since March 2016, and this was a moment where I just got to take a breath and kind of take it all in and think about how things were going and think about everything and just not do the same routine. I think it's important for human beings to not always do the same routine.
Yes.
And you would think, we do a lot of crazy things, right? We do a lot of crazy streams and stuff like that, but there is a routine. There's like, this has to get posted here, or I have to spend this portion of my day playing, this portion editing, this portion writing. And it was nice just being like, I'm going to go to a barbecue. I haven't done that in 3 years. And just sort of that breaking up of the regular routine. And I was curious because I don't know about vacations you guys have taken. I've never really talked to it about you. What's sort of been the most therapeutic vacation for you guys?
Well, when Mike Buddy got married, I went to Bora Bora, but a nearby island. Everybody always talks about Bora Bora. It's like the Triple X, Bora Bora. It's like like a very classic like vacation spot.
Yeah.
But actually, he got married on an island named Moorea. That was not necessarily remote. Like it was definitely close to like a major like metropolitan center, but just the island itself, there was not a lot going on there. And I figured that video games are really good. I love video games. Sadly, video games are now second place in as far as the greatest thing that you can do in the world. The greatest thing that you can do is get a overwater bungalow, like just over the water.
Explain this to me.
That's the best. You can basically like stay at a hotel, but you have your own room in your own little like hut that is just on water. So you just like wake up in the morning and you're like, I'm going in the water right now. And then you just get down and you're like, boom, you're in the ocean. You swim around. And I had been to overwater bungalows. I'd stayed in overwater bungalows, but specifically on Moorea. We were right at the end, so there was no one to the left or right of us or in front of us. It was just like our view uninterrupted on ocean level. The water just felt like a bathtub all day. It was just out of control.
So
I was depressed when we left.
When you
like
looked
not
around.
just like shucks, I'm sad. I'm gonna miss this place. Like 2 or 3 day depression. Coming back, it was so impactful.
When you looked around, was there just no one?
There were definitely people there, but they are all in the same chill vibe. Like everybody that worked there was just like very calm. Actually, it was the thing that surprised me about a lot of the islands there is they're owned by France, so it's technically France. So like a lot of people there speak French, and so that vibe, I wasn't anticipating. But
how do you spend your days in a bungalow?
Not doing a lot.
Yeah.
I brought Fantasy Life on 3DS. I played a lot of Fantasy Life, just soaking up just the wind alone, just like standing there and just feeling like that uninterrupted ocean breeze, just like that's traveled across miles and miles of the Pacific Ocean, just like hitting me. That could last for about half an hour.
Yeah.
The meals got a little repetitive because we had a lot of our meals at the resort, and because we were there for a wedding, it took several days to get through like all the events. So having the same breakfast for like the 6th day was like, okay, maybe I could go. It might be nice to like drive into town to go someplace different.
How many people were in the bungalow with you?
Just me and the troop. Just me and Amanda. Yep.
Nice. Very nice. Another thing I realized, and you've told me a lot how much you value the outdoors and how important it is to just get out there and see the world. I made a considered effort to not look at screens as much. I mean, there were definitely times I had to check in for Easy Ally stuff, but there were just days where it's like, I'm not going to look at a television or a computer monitor or my phone. Mm-hmm. I'm going to read a book, or I'm going to sit on this deck and watch birds. And I sound like an old Midwestern man, but you just need it. Sometimes you just need to sit in silence. And it was amazing to me how much noise was in my life. And it was nice kind of getting away from that.
There is a group of people, I wish I had the name, that is going around the world recording silence. Because it seems like something you're like, why is silence all over the place? Not really. There's not many places outside on Earth that you can record that you're not going to pick up a plane or a car or somebody talking, or even like a car honk can like travel like a pretty great distance. And so
well, it's really great. I remember one time we went up to Mount Wilson Observatory, and you could hear like the birds cutting through the air, like as they flew over. It was just like, what the heck?
So it's rare. Enjoy it if you know there's a place. I know a lot of our fans live in some pretty remote areas.
Yeah.
Like if there's places you can go to that you can just like to like Alaska, like there's nothing but the wind. That's pretty cool.
I can imagine it'd be really frustrating recording silence. Like you have to have moments where you sit down to record and then a noise happens. You just go,
I think they did a lot of that for The Witness. Like those environments, they went around, I think it was Angel Island in around San Francisco. And they recorded like environmental audio around there to kind of have for similar environments in The Witness.
Soothing. Bloodworth, have you been on any fantastic vacations? You've kind of been to some exotic locations relatively recently.
I don't know if I'd say exotic, but like the most recent vacation was for our anniversary, and I like vacations like my open world games. We went up to a spot kind of like central coast of California, where like one of the places we were looking at having our wedding, but ended up not going to. So it's like, let's just go back up there and check that out a little bit more. And it was off season, so everything was like really quiet, and it's like right around when we were getting a lot of the rains in California. So like places that are normally like brown and gross, like everything was just like lit up bright green, like you're in Scotland or Ireland or something, and just like the fog rolling in off of the coast and everything, and just being up there, like having just the relaxed hotel room, and then just literally just like looking at the map and like, okay, what on the map is green? And let's go there. Let's drive up the coast. There's a green spot. Let's stop there and see what that is. And finding, all kinds of places that nobody had ever told me about. I didn't know. But like, this is amazing. There's these gigantic cliffs and all these different rock formations as the waves are carving them out. And there's a whole bunch of seals and
You are a real-life adventurer.
A couple Korok seeds. It was a good trip.
I want to go on a vacation with you. I want to just sit in a car with Bloodworth and then have us both get excited about some unknown, undiscovered thing.
But there are definitely friends I have, people that I've known that are really good at that, as opposed to people who are not at just like finding good restaurants, finding good locations, finding good like non-touristy but still worthwhile places to stop.
Well, even in my own day-to-day life, when me and my girlfriend are thinking of a place to go eat, we always drive by places and it's like, oh, we've never been to this side of town. Why don't we go there? And then we're actually thinking about places to eat.
Gone.
It's just gone. It's just gone. And so I need to do a better. I love trying new things. And so I just need to be better about.
That's why we need the contact lenses that you wear that track those things. So when you say them, it takes a mental picture of it and stores it in the phone, and then you check later.
Apparently Roombas are tracking everything going on in people's
Whoa.
houses now. I just heard
Whoa.
something on the radio on the way over.
It's thinking.
I can't handle it. I can't have my whole life be recorded. It's too much. But
Minority Report. I'm so game.
You are?
For the record,
You're game?
yeah, I'm so game.
so you'll be the first one among us to have like cybernetic implants.
My dream. Well, not only
Well, I
that,
don't know.
my
Ian has
yeah.
Alexa already. Remember?
my dream is that, but Alexa functions
dad
on
has
request.
Alexa. It was
So you got to like
strange.
ask Alexa for something. My dream is when Alexa is always listening to me and always processing everything I'm saying always. So when I ask Alexa for something, it's not like, hey, listen to what I'm saying right now. It's give me information on the last thing I just said, or even earlier. Like, hey, that thing I was talking about this morning. What was that? You know, what movie was that? Or the thing I searched for yesterday. You know, access.
Would
that.
you go? Tell me the last thing my neighbor just said.
Sure.
Do you think you'd be able to resist if you had the power?
No, I'm just kidding.
It's hard.
We'll see. Yeah.
When you're given access to all the information, it's hard not knowing. Boy, we have a list of video games.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Time to get to work, Ben.
I have to pick who goes first. And you would think with the summer, before we came into the summer, I was like, oh, this will be the time where we'll have most of our things that we're talking about won't be video game related. It'll be like, oh, Brandon's been to several musicals, or
Yeah.
or Bloodworth is talking about F1 racing or something. But
Right.
we're playing just as many games now
Yep.
as we were before, and so it is a game-filled frame trap. Blood, let's start with you. What do you want to talk about with first? You've got a list of things here.
Yeah. I'll start off with a DLC for Deus Ex: Mankind Divided called Criminal Past, and it kind of, for frame of reference, because this came out in I think February. And as I said, I had a vacation right then. I had a family emergency. Then we did GDC. Then the Switch came out. So, I got this game, and it's really DLC, but it's kind of, it might have been better to put it out as a standalone game. We'll get to that. So yeah, it's just been sort of sitting there on my backlog. And the other thing is, if you've listened to me talk about Deus Ex before, I've always been very dissatisfied with how they've handled DLC. I felt like Square Enix Montreal, for all their great game design and everything, did not know what the heck to do about DLC. And Human Revolution is my biggest pet peeve, because they put out this thing called the Missing Link. And it's like, no, there wasn't a missing link there. That played out way better before you inserted this 8-hour detour that just slows the pace of the game down. And then they did a similar thing that wasn't as egregious for Mankind Divided, but it was like this other, bank robbery kind of thing that supposedly happened at this very specific time in the story. And A Criminal Past, I don't know if I would necessarily call it the best DLC, but it at least gets that right. This is a standalone story that is separate from all of the other events in the Deus Ex universe. And so it doesn't feel as weird, like you're suddenly taking my progression away and everything else, because it all sort of makes sense. And the way that it's set up is there's a therapist at TF29 where you're an agent. Mm-hmm. And she's she's sort of new to the team. And she's like, okay, tell me about your first mission with TF29, because I'm the details in the file, that seems hazy. I want to get the real report down as to what happened. And so this is going back before Mankind Divided, and you were basically inserted into a prison in Arizona to get in contact with a guy who's been in deep cover, investigating gangs, because you need to pull him out and get him on a different case that he's valuable for. And so that kind of covers the whole why are all my augments taken away, because you're in prison. They put a thing in to suppress your abilities.
Oh, okay.
And
isn't there an accident at the beginning of Mankind Divided where they tweak your powers in a way? So obviously you're not getting that if it's a prequel.
Yeah, so, and plus they have the experimental augs in Mankind Divided. And that's another cool thing they do in A Criminal Past, is once you do start getting access to your augs, is they give the player a choice, and it's very kind of fourth wall breaking or whatever, but at least it's okay, the stuff that's in Mankind Divided happens after this. So you can have that, or you can have the canon abilities that you would actually have, that Jensen would have at this point.
Yeah.
So you can play through it either way. So the one thing that I would really have wished they would have done a bit more of, though, would have been maybe a little bit longer of an introduction to being in the prison. Like maybe like some more just kind of daily life, some more doing favors for people. They have a bit of that, but it feels like you just almost immediately like just start getting things done. Whereas I feel like I would have liked to have settled into that environment a bit more first.
Yeah, it's something that I struggle with a lot with DLC, where you have a big open-ended game, and then you say, well, let's scale that down to just a small fraction of the length of it. And I feel like, especially in a game like Deus Ex, where world building and character progression and little details are so much of a part of it, that it just... Nothing would be a worse experience, but that it wouldn't fill you up the same way that you'd be going into the main game for. And I think that's something that Witcher does really, really well, is these expansions are huge. They're entire games in their own right, and so you don't feel that dwindling effect that you might with Deus Ex. Is that true here? You said this is the best of the Deus Ex DLC that you've played?
I think so. Because again, just because it's a standalone story, and I think that actually plays in its favor now that we know that Deus Ex is probably not getting continued for another 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
It's good to have something that this is the beginning and end of this, and it doesn't have any weird cliffhangers or tie-ins to the overarching plot. It's just this mission, and it does have a lot of stuff to kind of unwrap. There are kind of multiple layers of undercover and conspiracies and things happening, and and this guy thinks you're actually somebody, thinks he knows who you are, but he's wrong. So it's he knows you're undercover, but he thinks you're undercover for somebody else. And so you have to kind of play into that. And so there's a lot of different interesting layers to it. And then same with the gameplay. There's this one point where there's this augmented biocell that you are supposed to get and give to somebody else as a favor to this guy in the prison. And there's multiple points along the way of this quest line that you can just choose to use it on yourself. And so it's okay, do I use this on myself and make these people angry with me, or do I play along even though I don't know exactly what they're going to do with it? And it's interesting because at first it was okay, I'm going to play along, I'm going to see where this leads, go down this path. And then I got to a certain point where this doesn't seem like a good guy. Something's not right here. I'm not... Okay, I've got everything I need out of you guys. I don't need you. I need those 6 ability points right now. Good luck with whatever you're going to do.
Oh, cool.
And I'm curious, how that decision would have played out differently, later on the line, whether more people would have gotten killed or less people would have gotten killed or whatever as things, get crazier later on. And then the level design is still really great in giving you multiple options and lots of room to explore. I was actually in this one part where it was the administrative section and all of these people's offices and stuff, and I was trying to figure out how to get through the offices without getting spotted by anyone, and then I just went to jump over something and I grabbed on, and I'm oh, there's a whole path up here on the ceiling above all the offices that I wasn't even paying attention to.
Oh, neat.
And so I could sneak around that way as well.
How long is it?
I'd say Deus Ex and Dishonored and stuff, they're so variable. I'd say maybe 6 to 8 hours, something like that.
Okay.
Decent length.
I feel with all of the Deus Ex DLC, I've had I've just discovered months after it came out that it even existed.
Right.
I feel they've done a pretty terrible job of communicating what their DLC is, why it's cool, where I don't have that with other comparable games. I very much know about the Dishonored DLC, and everybody was talking about it, and there's a lot of hype behind
that's
it.
a really big deal.
Yeah, it is. It's a big deal, and a lot of people, you have people out there that say the Dishonored DLC is better than the main game, and everything that you're saying with this Deus Ex DLC seems like exactly what you want. I'm surprised that this is the first I'm hearing about it.
Right.
I didn't even know its name until you
Yeah, I
said,
think
hey, this is what I'm talking about on Frame Trap.
They probably did put out a trailer for it, I'm sure. And I know, like, you know, the PR guy was like really like prodding me a lot. It's like, yeah, you guys gonna cover it? It's like, yeah, I want to at some point, but I don't know when.
Yeah.
You know, it's like now, it's like 6 months later almost. It's like,
Right.
Now's the time. Now's the time that I finally got into this thing while my Switch was broken. That's kind of what happened. It like led to me playing a bunch of other games.
That's what it took.
Can you explain that? Your Switch broke. How did it break? What broke?
How it broke, I am not entirely sure. I guess it was just a matter of, it was a defect that just took enough time before it finally happened. I never got like an official like diagnosis from Nintendo, but essentially what happened was I was playing Splatoon 2 for review the Friday before Splatfest, and I had been in lobbies, I'd been playing all day, and then all of a sudden like I got disconnected, and then when I went to just like get reconnected back into a game, like my Switch just wasn't responding. And then I tried, rebooting it and started playing again, and then it like just froze up again. And it was just kind of this cycle of like would start freezing after a couple of minutes, and I would start getting error screens and all of this kind of thing. And through my own troubleshooting and tests, I figured out it is most likely had something to do with the wireless controller, because when I turned it to airplane mode or I turned Wi-Fi off, like I could play it indefinitely. And then as soon as I turned the Wi-Fi back on, it was like dead. So, and then I somehow got to play it for like another 2 hours on Saturday, and then it started doing it again. So I just sent it to Nintendo. It took like 3 or 4 days for them to take a look at it, swap it out with a new one and swap my data to the new one and send me the new one back.
So you got it back within 4 days?
Yeah, like I made a service call on Saturday. I shipped it on Monday. I got it back on Thursday.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
That makes
Yeah.
me
Yeah.
makes
There's
me feel
hope.
all right if something goes bad. You have another. I want to transition this really quick, because you have another Nintendo game, not Splatoon 2,
Right.
that you want to talk about, that I played the demo of, that the demo's available now for everybody.
Yeah.
Before we do that, I've never had a Nintendo handheld break on me. Like, I've never had it
Right.
go defective.
Yeah.
I've dropped them, I've scuffed them up, but it's all personal error. I've never had them go bad. On both a PSP and a Vita, I've had like dead pixels and stuff. Have you ever had... Nintendo handhelds just seem indestructible.
Yeah. I wonder if like even my old Game Boy Advances still work. Probably. I still have a couple of those like clamshells around.
I
I
feel
did
like I
have
sent in a DS or something with a dead pixel once, but I don't have a clear memory of it. It was such a long time ago since I've actually dealt with customer service. But I still had the number memorized. That was hilarious. It was like, I gotta call Nintendo.
It's a really boring thing, but I'm always fascinated by how consoles break. Because you'll go online and you'll read these wild stories
Right.
of, I turned it on and then every light in my house went on. Like, you just see these crazy stories of like, how could that possibly happen? You must be the only person it's happening to. If you have had a crazy console or a handheld mishap, please let us know, because I am curious. But what is the 3DS game you've been playing, Blood?
Yeah, so I've been playing Hey Pikmin, which weird title, by the way. Hey Pikmin. And like on the 3DS menu, like all you can really even see is like the hey part of it.
This is such a nitpicky thing.
The Hey series. Hey,
But-
Mario.
I want to get your opinion on it. The title in and of itself kind of makes it feel inessential, right?
Sure.
It just...
It's a variable to Pikmin. It's not Pikmin. It's Hey Pikmin.
Right. When you say, it's like when you go up to your friend and you go, hey, have you seen this? And it's just so casual, you'll probably forget about the conversation immediately after having
Even if
it.
it was like, hey, Persona, you're like,
Yeah, right. Right. Like, even just recommending it
dancing all
to
night,
somebody, have you played Hey Pikmin? Like, no, I haven't played Hey Pikmin. I don't know. It just doesn't... I guess it's fun. It's carefree, but I don't know.
Sure. Yeah, and I honestly, like, I didn't immediately write it off. I know, like, there's a lot of people that, like, had this backlash like on the internet that it's like, oh, it's a side scroller, it's not like real Pikmin, blah 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 blah, and I'm like, I don't know that I want real Pikmin on the 3DS anyways.
Sure.
Which I think is an interesting point, because it's like, okay, could Nintendo like get away with putting out this game, like say on the Switch, like a side 2D Pikmin game? Whereas like 3DS, it's like, well, yeah, you don't expect as much out of the 3DS. So
right.
That's fine. It's a smaller version, smaller game. It's a different game. But I haven't played a ton of it. I played a couple hours, gotten through the first world. But so far, unfortunately, it's not really getting me. Like, it's actually been kind of annoying in its design.
See, I was one of the people that wrote off Hey Pikmin, and I downloaded and just played through the demo. I didn't spend a lot of time with it, just enough to finish the levels. And I thought it was all right. I thought for a side-scrolling Pikmin game, the way that they kind of condensed it down into this format was pretty smart. Like, I was having fun. Like, the levels are very vertical. And
and
so,
that's the thing. That's one reason, like, we're not doing a review. We're talking about it because capturing this and putting it in a video is just kind of insane, because the whole thing is 2 screens high with this gap in the middle that's accounted for. And so it's just like, I don't know how you would present it very well.
But one of the things that I really love about Pikmin is you're in this world, and it's just like, hey, go find this stuff. And you'll have a lot of moments where it's like, oh, I think there's something up there, and then it becomes this puzzle of figuring out how to get there, and that's kind of translated into Hey Pikmin, where you'll see something up above you, and you have to figure out a way to get there. But I don't know, maybe that gets old, or it's more shallow than it appears in the demo. I'm not sure.
I mean, I definitely like some of the stuff that they're doing, especially again with the 2 screen thing. It's interesting to like. You can't get up there directly, but you can throw the Pikmin up there, and that works pretty well. The main thing that has been kind of grating on me is there's a part of Pikmin AI design that I think is easy to take for granted that is actually not present in this game, that makes a crucial difference and makes it super annoying, is that in a normal Pikmin game, when you throw a Pikmin, they will stop and stay in that place unless there's something to do. And in this game, when you throw a Pikmin, they will always run straight back to you. And so there are these moments where I'll be exploring, and again, Pikmin is a game where I feel like, okay, I explore, I get my sense of my surroundings, and then I go in a direction and do that thing. I can't really do that in this game. I kind of have to take the opportunity as soon as I see something, because if I go over this cliff that's like this much too high, then I can't take my Pikmin back with me. Because as soon as I throw them back up there, they're going to run back down the cliff, and I can't get us up to that thing. And so my only option is to replay the level. And even though the levels aren't that long, it's kind of a pain, because this isn't a game about completing levels. This is a game about finding everything in those levels. And so I just want to be able to do that without feeling restricted.
Do you think your criticism comes from you wanting more of the Pikmin experience, or just that it's bad on its own?
I think it's bad on its own, and I've just kind of identified like why it's bad on its own, because it's like I walked too far to the right, and so now I have to replay the level. Like, that's bad in any game.
Sure.
And then I did, like, the last level I actually didn't get any treasures, because it was just full of those kind of you shouldn't have done that yet, or kind of things.
Yeah, and thinking about Pikmin, and a lot of what makes it so good is you'll get into those fights, or you'll get into those situations where you get in over your head and everything is on fire, or all of your Pikmin are drowning, and you still kind of have some room to like make choices in the moment. Do I grab them and retreat? Do I like leave them to die? And because you can be kind of separate from them, or put them into different groups, I feel like you can just sort of do impromptu crisis management in a more interesting way, where they're tethered to you more heavily in Hey Pikmin. The other thing, again, I just played the demo, so I don't know if enemies get more elaborate, but one of the great things about Pikmin is because you have these little tiny units that fight for you, when you're fighting these creatures, they can roll over on you, they can use their tongue to lick you up, they can jump on you. It being a 3D game and them being so much bigger than you is a big part of combat, just taking into account that space. Whereas in Hey Pikmin, in the demo, I just sort of found myself just tapping on them until they were dead.
Yeah,
And not,
most of the normal enemies have not presented any kind of
Right.
problem at all. The
It
first
wasn't
boss fight
interesting.
was pretty cool because it would come in and out of the background, and so you'd have to dodge and you'd have to find ways to sort of distract it, before you could run and get behind it and that kind of thing. But there's other things that are really weird about it, in that the number of Pikmin you have doesn't feel like it matters.
yeah,
Like you complete a level and they go to this place called the Pikmin Park, which is basically just kind of they're just sort of doing this stuff in the background while you do levels. And so that's like a top-down, almost like a normal Pikmin game. And it's like, okay, well, put the electric Pikmin on this side of the park and put the fire Pikmin on that side of the park, and there's not really any thought to it. And as you complete levels, you add more Pikmin to that group, but that doesn't affect at all how many Pikmin you bring into the next level. Like, each level is like, okay, you come into level and whatever Pikmin are there, those are the Pikmin that you use. And if by chance all of your Pikmin die, well, then suddenly 4 more Pikmin will appear so that you can keep playing the game.
They're on loan, these Pikmin.
Yeah. So the only real consequence of being in a level and not having enough Pikmin is that there'll be certain devices that you need enough Pikmin to carry this or to sit on this or that kind of thing. So that's kind of cool though, is that there are secret exits to other levels and things that you can only get if you've kept your Pikmin alive.
Brandon, what's your experience with Pikmin?
I love Pikmin 1. Dearly, dearly love Pikmin 1. Didn't give Pikmin 3 a chance, which is unfair, but played Pikmin 2 until I went into a dungeon that had multiple floors, and I think I was on floor 8 out of 10 and wiped. Lost everybody, my entire crew. And so I was like, oh, I gotta go back to the surface. And then realized, it's gonna take me a couple hours to even just get ready to go back down there again. And I don't know if I'm gonna remember by the time I go back down the lessons that I was supposed to learn to not put myself in danger like that. And maybe I should play a different video game than Pikmin 2 at this point.
It
And
was
that's what
too
I did.
much of a punch in the gut.
Yeah, I just kind of, I didn't feel like recovering from that. But love Pikmin, would love a Pikmin 4 on Switch. Would love to get back to that traditional series. But I've replayed Pikmin 1 on 2 separate occasions. So I think I've played that game 3 times all the way through.
Nice.
Because it's just the length of it is just the perfect, and it's so addicting to put the ship back together and experience Olimar discovering these things and learning more about them. And
I feel like a lot of people complain about the time management in games. I feel like when people don't like Majora's Mask, for instance, the thing that they point to is the clock. But I love in Pikmin 1 just the strategy of what am I going to do today? All right, this is how much time I left. Is it worth going for this? And I feel like that is, out of all 3 Pikmin games, that is done best in Pikmin 1. Where I felt like my decisions mattered the most. I was punished the most severely. And yeah, Pikmin 1 is just so much more compact than the other 2 games. Have you played it with the Wii controls?
yes,
So
that was the 3rd time.
Okay.
Played it twice on GameCube, and then
I'm of the opinion that is the best way to play Pikmin ever. I don't want to play Pikmin almost any other way. Did you like the motion controls?
I did like the motion controls. I don't think it. I don't think it's something where I would go back to the GameCube and not enjoy myself, after having tried them. But it's like Resident Evil 4.
That's how I feel.
It's a whole different game. Yeah, it adds a lot to it.
Just being able to flick your wrist and point at something and attack it versus taking the stick and trying to orient it in the right position.
Yeah.
That was actually something that with Hey Pikmin, Blood, I don't know if you ran into this. I don't know if I'm just not used to it yet, but because it is using the touchscreen to aim and throw Pikmin, and because it is very much taking advantage of both of those screens, there were so many times where I was just I wish I could just tap the top screen.
Right.
It felt like I couldn't always aim in the space that I wanted to aim in order to get my Pikmin somewhere. Did you run into that?
Not too bad. One thing that I think was is kind of funny is when I found out this is the same team that did Yoshi's New Island. Mm-hmm. It's throwing Pikmin in this is a lot like throwing Yoshi eggs. It's kind of it's sort of like living Yoshi eggs in a way.
Sure.
So it has a lot of the same mechanics. Another thing that is kind of interesting is and I've been on the fence to this. Like it's cute and sometimes annoying, but there are actually like a lot of cutscenes in this. It's almost like you walk up to a place where there's some Pikmin and like this little short plays out. There's this like comedic thing, this cute thing the Pikmin do in this situation or whatever before they actually join your group. But then the other thing that's weird is this game is like all over Amiibo. There's like Amiibo on this screen, Amiibo on that screen, Amiibo on the map screen. And it's kind of strange. There's just like so much in your face Amiibo stuff.
What is the Amiibo stuff getting you?
I don't know all of the functions because I don't actually have any Pikmin Amiibo, but it's also compatible with Splatoon, Animal Crossing, and Mario Amiibo. But I think some of the Pikmin,
of course, you know.
I think some of the Pikmin ones, they'll get you like more Pikmin in the park, and then I think there's some way that you can save and transfer data back and forth to one, but I'm not exactly sure what that does for you. But using the Mario and Animal Crossing Amiibo, what there are is on each world map, there are these extra little bonus puzzle stages, and so when you scan the Amiibo, it'll pop onto one of those bonus stages, and they're really they're almost not even really a stage. It's more like a puzzle room because you go in and it's just like the Amiibo is here, and figure out how to, solve the puzzle to get your Pikmin to retrieve it, and so most of them aren't that difficult to figure out. But I did have one where it was like I had to avoid an enemy, and then my Pikmin got eaten, and so I wasn't able to solve the puzzle, and then the Amiibo went away, and I had to like re-scan it to get it to pop up onto another bonus room.
When your Pikmin get eaten, are you as sad as you are with regular Pikmin?
I'm not. Unfortunately,
Do they
I'm
still
not.
have little Pikmin ghosts?
Yeah.
I feel
But
like
it is one thing that is fun about the Amiibo though is just to see what they say, like what Olimar says about these statues. And it's like, oh, like Peach reminds me of my wife.
Yeah.
And Tom Nook is like, what kind of person would put a sweater on an animal with so much fur? Just like this is so it is kind of cute that way, but. It's one of those things where it's like, well, you can't complete this collection without all the different Amiibo. It's just another screen that's going to have a bunch of question marks on it.
I don't know if I've been more guilt-stricken in video games than when I leave a Pikmin behind at night.
right.
That's I thought I had everybody, but there's just one lone Pikmin.
Because it's like a Band-Aid slowly ripping off.
Yeah.
It doesn't just happen. It's all right. This is how many Pikmin you're missing. It's flashing on the screen. The night is slowly coming. We're gonna show you a cutscene with a panning camera of your Pikmin getting eaten, terrified in their final moments. Yeah.
They trusted you. They thought you were their friend.
Yeah.
Leave them behind.
No. Blood, I'm kind of bummed out. I didn't put too much thought into it when I was playing the demo, but I feel like you and Brandon collectively just, rather than playing Hey Pikmin, maybe I should just finish Pikmin 3. Maybe that would be
Fire Emblem.
That actually.
Hey Fire Emblem.
I mean, finishing Pikmin 3 would be a great call for sure.
Yeah.
But,
So 3's good?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Three's
okay.
great.
Yeah. That final level is super hard, so be ready.
The thing that it was kind of a moment where, you know how Huber says that he doesn't like laser puzzles, and it's just this weakness that he has with games? I am bad in all aspects of my life at handling multiple things at the same time. And that's all of Pikmin 3.
You like real-time strategy, though. That's why I can't stand real-time strategy.
I
most
like
of the time.
real-time strategy, but with any real-time strategy, I'm not taking it incredibly seriously. I guess the only time that's not true is I used to play a lot of Warcraft 3, but that was when I was a kid and I had a lot of time to devote to it, or the Total War series, but that's like its own different weird thing. I like turn-based strategy. I like being able to think and just that's why I like RPGs, because it's like, okay, I'm going to focus on this one thing. I'm going to get to the character at this point. All right, we've done that. Moving on. It's just how I work. It's just how I function. And in Pikmin 3, they're like, hey, you can do multiple things at the same time, switch to this person, do this thing, and then switch back over to this person. I'm like, my brain can't handle this. I can't do it. But it probably wasn't. Blood, you're very good at managing things. Pikmin 3 probably wasn't a problem for you.
Delegation.
Delegation.
I'm
the
with
delegator.
Brandon where the real-time strategy, I've never really got into it because, yeah, it stresses me out. But Pikmin seems to be an exception for me.
Blood, we've got 2 more games here,
Yeah.
both of which I don't know anything about.
Yeah, so 2 games that are very closely tied together because I got the code for Sundered, which is the new game by the same team that did Jotun. And I'm like, well, I haven't played Jotun, and I've been curious about that game, so let me check that out. So my intention was to put a couple hours into Jotun and start playing Sundered, and it's been the other way around. I played all the way through Jotun because I liked it so much, and I've only put a couple hours into Sundered. But we'll start with Jotun, and this is really cool. It's a top-down action-adventure game, and it's all based around Norse mythology, and it's also narrated in Icelandic, which is a great touch. And all hand-drawn with, like, really great art. Like, you can actually kind of see, like, some of the sketch lines and stuff and some of the characters and, like, really, really cool animation. And you're essentially this Viking that died in a dishonorable way. And you are trying to prove yourself to the gods that you're worthy. And you go to these different areas and kill these Jotun, which are basically, like, you know, monsters, like elemental monsters. And it's really great because it gives you a really good sense of, like, feeling small. Like, your character's pretty small, and like, at times you almost can't, like, distinguish what they are with these big monsters. And then also, you kind of like Shadow of the Colossus in a way. Like, you're not fighting, like, a ton of smaller enemies all the time. You're sort of exploring these worlds and trying to find your way. And actually, one part that plays into that is that you have a map, but you don't see your position on the map. So you're trying to recognize the landmarks and the places that you are, and try to think, okay, I found this here. That's on the map now. Okay, I can keep going up this way to try to see if there's anything else in that direction. So it's just really interesting navigating that way. And then they also do a really good job of setting the scale by just kind of zooming the camera in and out a lot. So you'll be closer when you're just walking around and exploring, but then you get to this vista and it'll zoom back, and then you can see this whole other level in the distance. And it works really well, I think. And there's this one, like, dwarf city where there's, like, this army of dwarfs comes attacking you, and it's just so much stuff on the screen, and it's just so amazing, just, like, fighting through them all and them all going down. There's another one that's like,
What style of game is it?
it's kind of like a Zelda game in a way. So
Okay.
like you defeat bosses, and then you find, like, these statues of the gods.
Is
and
it
the gods,
top down? Like,
Yeah.
Okay.
And the gods give you, like, different abilities. Like there's one that's like a shield. There's one that's healing. There's one Loki will actually create, like, a decoy, so enemies will attack the decoy, and then the decoy will explode, which works out really well, especially, like, you know, when you're just trying to, like, bait a boss into one direction and, like, you know, come up behind him and attack. And then Freya will give you speed, and then Thor will give you, like, Mjolnir, so you, like, just knock a big hammer onto a dude. So it kind of, you kind of have, like, this central hub, and then you just go out to each of the different levels, and you unlock each one as you defeat the last one. Yeah, there's, like, these moments where, like, you're on an ice lake, and, like, you start, like, seeing this shadow under the ice, and then this big, huge serpent comes up, or, like, you'll be going across, like, the branches of Yggdrasil and stuff. And what I like about it is, like I don't know Norse mythology, like, super well, and I kind of feel like I learned more about it through this game. And I don't know if it's, like, that accurate to real Norse mythology, but it gives me this sense of authenticity in a way.
When these moments are happening, where you're having these big moments where you encounter this giant creature or this event, is it kind of that feeling where, oh man, this came out of nowhere, this world is dangerous, this could happen at any time? Or is it kind of like that classic video game thing where you go into the room and you're like, yeah, this something's going down here? How is that stuff?
Oh, it's definitely
transition?
like a focused boss fight, because
Okay.
what you'll do is generally there will be like 2 worlds, like 2 levels that you'll explore, and then once you've done both of those levels and you've gotten the runes from those levels, then that will unlock the way to the boss fight. So it's definitely kind of, video gamey in that sense, that it's, a pretty familiar pattern as you go through the game.
I feel like with these situations that you're encountering, something that would take me out of it is, I feel like difficulty is very important in a game like this, where you wouldn't want these giant creatures to be too easy or too predictable or feel too video gamey, because then it would take away from their sort of grandeur, I guess. Has it been pretty difficult?
Yeah, like it wasn't super difficult, but it definitely died a few times and had to reattempt some things. There was one, I think there was one level near the end of the game that was maybe took me as long as all the other levels put together. And that was partly just due to not only its size, but just some of the mechanics they had in the exploration, because there are these big guys that throw rocks at you. But then you can knock those rocks into the lava and build bridges. And like I said, I could look at my map and I could see that, like, okay, there's obviously a statue down to the south of this area that has an ability that I can unlock. I got to figure out how to get there, and I wasn't seeing a path. So I'm like, I am just going to use these rocks and build a bridge. And I just like, all right, throw a rock, hit it down, sinks into lava, hit a rock, and it just kept doing it. And it's like till I'd had like, I think probably like 25 or 30 rocks, and I had built my bridge all the way across to this island. And there was probably an easier way over there somewhere else.
But you did it.
I
You
did
felt
it.
good. You beat it.
And I got this ability that, is clearly an ability that is optional. So, it was nice to have that in the final boss fight.
Brandon, something that Blood said about how there's this authenticity to the Norse mythology that it's presenting, and how he felt like he was learning.
Mm-hmm.
I love, it's not just games, I love it when anything that I'm consuming makes me curious about the subject matter, and I go and I want to learn more, whether I read up on it or like I visit something. And it's just when it's not just a singular experience where it kind of like creeps into and affects the rest of your life. When was the last time that you consumed something, video game related or not, that made you go out and explore a new topic?
It wasn't. It didn't happen in that order. It was something that I was familiar with and then got more context on in the game.
Sure.
But I remember when everybody was like whining about Assassin's Creed 3 when that came out, and everyone was so frustrated. And they're like, "I don't like the story, and I don't like this world, and like
Yeah, I
these
was one of
battles
those
aren't
people.
these battles aren't as like as big as I thought they were going to be." All of those things I agreed with. But I went to school in Boston, and my brother did too, and so I'd visited Boston and been to a lot of these locations. And so I mean, every time I kind of re-triangulated my position, I was like, oh wait, I know where I am. So remember, one big eye opener I had was there was a office building, and at the top they had a map of Boston, and it was Boston when it was in the 18th century when it was first discovered, and or not discovered, when we first started colonizing it. And then they had a overlay, a projection that would be like, this is Boston now. And so much of it had been filled in, like the apartment building where I lived was like on the ocean. Like they've just put in all these like landfills and just like basically made it a big landmass where they could build a city on top of. And so a lot of other Assassin's Creed games I played, I would kind of like back out of those little messages that would pop up whenever you get near a building or something, and they're like, "Oh, a little interesting factoid about that person or that building," and be like, "Yeah, I'll read those later," meaning never. And here I was like, "Oh no, I actually do want to read those," and some of them were actually spoken out loud by the characters that are outside the animus that are communicating to you in the game.
Yeah.
And so I think there was one especially that they were like, this will be a library in 20 years, and this famous author will go to this library, own the library, or be seen there a lot. And he's like, oh, that's cool. Can you visit the library present day? And she's like, nope, it's a coffee shop now. And I'm like, it is. Like, I've actually been to that coffee shop. So like that, having that context was great and made what could potentially be a not as good game as other games in the franchise entertaining for me.
Sure, you could appreciate it from a whole new angle.
Yeah.
I I haven't been to all the cities in America, but I've been to Boston several times, and Boston is awesome.
Boston's great.
Boston is great.
It's a groovy town. I'm sad I've never been to PAX East because I bet
that's the only PAX that I've been to.
Yeah, I bet that's fun.
Yeah,
I've always wanted to do that.
It is fun. Blood, do you have anything else that you want to say? Is it... You've said this to me 3 or 4 times now. Is it Jotun?
Yeah, Jotun. I
Jotun,
think is the best that we're
But
going to
with a
approximate.
J if you want to Google it.
Yeah.
Jotun.
What did you play it on?
I played it on PC.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was one of those things where it's like, okay, I got the code for this. Do I have Jotun somewhere? And I like looked at our Steam list and like, okay, there it is. Cool, I can download it. Because there's a lot of... I actually have like another probably 10 or 15 games right now that like nobody either has interest in or time to play, and so those will go onto our group accounts in case they come up later.
I know you just probably have a list of all of our library games and all of the codes that we've gotten on your computer, but I like to imagine that you have like this old tome that you flop open and like dust comes out of, and you have like a giant feathered quill that you write things on. And you're like, Huber has checked out Assassin's Creed Brotherhood or whatever it is. That's my headcanon.
Yeah, and so nothing else specific about Jotun other than the fact that I was planning to just peek at it, get a reference, and no, like it grabbed me enough for me to want to play through that whole game, which wasn't super long either. It was probably
It sounds really cool.
6 or 8 hours, something like that.
Yeah.
But then Sundered, I just started the other day, and it's having the opposite effect on me. Like, I saw the trailer, I'm like, this looks awesome. I can't wait. And getting started on the game, just like, I don't know about this game. And it's a little bit more cryptic in terms of story, because it starts off with this great-looking scene of, like, you walking through a sandstorm, and then, like, some kind of hands come out of the ground and just, like, drag you underground. And then... kind of Shadow the Colossus in a different way. There's this thing called the trapezohedron. It just looks like this big red chunk of stone, and it seems super evil, but it's like, the only way you're going to survive is with my help. And it's like, I guess this thing is going to guide me through this world, even though I don't really trust it. So... and then it plays. It's instead of being top down like Jotun, it's a side scroller, and so more like Castlevania. Really, it's mostly like melee attacks and dodges, and wall jumps. Lots of wall jumping. But there's two main things so far that have been dragging it down for me. One of them is the world is procedurally generated. A bit. It's weird because it's like there are chunks that like this is always here, like this big chunk is here, but then there are individual rooms within that chunk that rearrange kind of like every time you die. And so just trying to get back to where you were is kind of a bit of a challenge because it kind of has that like roguelike thing towards like there's not checkpoints in the map that I've gotten to so far. It's like when I die, I'm back at the beginning. And so I've got to go all the way back down through here, but it's not the same route every time. And it's also, like, not... Those areas aren't that distinctive visually either. I just kind of feel like I'm going through, like, the same kind of jungly area, the same kind of industrial area. Like, it just sort of... Unlike Jotun, where I was, like, constantly presented with new visuals, it's just, like, I feel like I'm going through the same rooms over and over again. The other thing that's really weird and frustrating is... the enemy design. So unlike a Castlevania or a Metroid or something where you just have enemies placed in the world in specific ways and behaviors, in this it seems almost like the enemies are on a timer. And so you'll just be going through the world and it's kind of empty, and then all of a sudden flood of enemies coming at you, and they're all these types of enemies that just come straight at you. Like, they don't do much else. Well, I have gotten some snipers now that are showing up, but a lot of them are just like, this thing's gonna run at you, like, and just jump in your face, and there'll be like 10 of those at the same time, and you just gotta like dodge and survive, and so it's just kind of this weird like annoyance of just like get mobbed by stuff like every 2 or 3 minutes and then move on. And and it's also like there's like there is a map, and it's strange because it kind of just on the map tells you that like you need an ability in this room to be able to go a certain way or to unlock the way forward in there. And I think the other thing that kind of bugged me is like the first boss or mini boss that I've come across was just like a larger version of one of those enemies that just flies at you. And I'm like, oh, like I saw cooler stuff in the trailer. I know it's there, but right now it feels more like a slog than I would like it to be.
Yeah, unlike what you were saying with Jotun, where you were describing these like elaborate, very cool scenes, that it felt like there was a world there. It felt like it was living. This just sounds like a bunch of systems stitched together that are not very fun to deal with, and they don't feel like. It doesn't sound like you want to explore. It doesn't sound like you can give me any particular moment that really stood out. It doesn't sound like you had any encounter that had any tension in it whatsoever.
Yeah, and I think, well, one of the things too, again, I think they're trying to, play on the roguelike thing is, like, when you die, like, when you go back to that first spot, that's where you can, like, beef up your skill tree. So it's like you kill all of these things, and it's like, okay, well, now I've got more health, now I've got more shields, now I've got more energy to dodge. And so I can get farther and deal with these hazards better, but it just doesn't, like, retreading those areas doesn't feel fun at all. And even exploring new areas hasn't felt that interesting. So it's weird. It's like, I don't know. Maybe somebody can do it well. I can't think of any examples, but I just don't know that procedurally generated and Metroidvania are things that belong together.
Well, it's a game that I've been hesitant to talk about on Frame Trap because I just haven't put enough time in. But based on early impressions, Dead Cells does seem like it does that very well. But Dead Cells, like, it has a great aesthetic, but it's also very much it has a great feel to it, where you're just. There's a satisfying loop of just going and killing things that it doesn't sound like is present in Sundered. And it just doesn't sound like Sundered nails any one particular thing. Like, it doesn't sound like it has an interesting world, doesn't sound like it has interesting enemies, doesn't sound like it's particularly fun to kill things. And it just doesn't have that focus. And I don't know, have either of you guys played Hollow Knight?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that game is great. I haven't played that much of it, but yeah, I do like what I played.
Because I feel like there are a lot of Metroidvanias out there.
Yeah,
and
there
I
are.
feel like,
I just thought that, actually.
Yeah.
Like, that genre's kicking right now.
Right. I feel like
even something like an Axiom Verge people probably missed, Even
That's
some of the
really
legacy ones from the last couple of years are still viable and still out there to get.
With Metroidvanias, I feel like what a lot of people focus on, almost to a detriment, is we just have to cram secrets in places. Where it's just, okay, we have to make it so it's like, oh, I'm going to want to come back here once I have the proper stuff, or once I, have the ability, or once I change something in the world. And they're so obsessed with how the levels are pieced together that they don't think about how the world is presented. And that's what's so good about Hollow Knight is the window dressing that it has, where you start in just this desolate town, and it feels so believable, and there's like there's a logic to it. It's not just a bunch of squares that are stitched together. It's like, no, this world makes sense, and when it slowly transitions out of that desolate area, you can see how that transition happened, and like it all of these
handles its characters really well.
Right. Yeah. I was just gonna say the characters, where they're not just like functions to be served. They're like, you hear this guy whistling and you go investigate him too. It's just piecing together that world is so important. That I think to me that's the most interesting thing. Like when you think about Castlevania Symphony of the Night or Super Metroid, like it is the believability of those worlds, despite how ridiculous they are, that make them so cool. So
yeah, and again, to be fair with both Hey Pikmin and Sundered, like I've only put a couple of hours into each, but it's just one of those things where it's, a couple of hours you should have grabbed me at some point, I feel, so there could be better stuff down the line, but you're going to have to push through it a bit, I think.
Mm-hmm. I want to talk about cutoff points for games where, you're not necessarily reviewing something and your time is limited and you have to cover a lot of things. When is the moment for you, Brandon, where you go, yep, this isn't working, and even if it gets really cool down the line, I'm gonna let it go?
Pikmin 2. That moment where I realize, like, I I just and it's interesting those moments I recognize, and I rarely will feel guilty about moving on to something because there's always so many great things to play. What I always find interesting is when I'll get like a gag reflex on a game where I'm just like, I should stop playing, but I kind of chew through it. It's kind of like, no, like I know you just got to pay. Like Galaxy of Heroes, I play religiously. I play that game on my phone every single day, and every now and then I'll just be like, this game's kind of boring. Ooh, like there it is. Like there's the that stop playing this game just reared its ugly head, but I'll kind of fight through it, being like, no, it's the persistence of this game that's so rewarding, and like unlocking all these characters and making my roster bigger.
Have you had the inverse of that, where your gut has been proven wrong, where you were just about to give up on a game and then you had the golden goose and it?
Yeah, Persona 5 probably. No, I'm just kidding.
I would totally believe that.
I mean, I will say with Persona 5, there were moments in the first like 5 to 6 hours where I questioned, like, am I ever going to get past the point where I feel like I'm obligated to play this game, where I feel like it's important for me to play this game and have as much of a reference on it as I can, versus I'm just playing this because I'm really enjoying myself. I'm enjoying every aspect of this.
Was that anxiety just the size of it that was overwhelming you, the unfamiliarity with it? Or?
Also, the time crunch. It's like, I can handle a time crunch if it's done in a genre that I more understand. Something like Dead Rising that's action, that I'm like, okay, I'm pretty good at killing these zombies, where whenever I hear you talk about like some hot dog vendor that gives you some bonus that you got to go to on every Tuesday, I'm like, I'm going to miss that guy. So there's like that fear of like, am I doing this right? I talk to you about like every time I would go to bed and be like, can I clean my desk? Like, not really, like, I thinking I'm missing that. Like there's some prompt that I'm not clicking.
No,
and
that
later,
cat,
like,
that cat can be kind of a jerk.
Right. But it's funny when you thought that, actually. I find that happens more in books, where like I will be a couple chapters into a book and be like, I don't care, and like sometimes it's been something that Amanda has read and been like, please keep going. And I'm like, okay, and then later when I finish it, I'm like, I'm very glad I finished that. Yeah. But boy, was I not into this world at all, or just kind of resented like how it was being fed to me. The Golden Compass, I remember, was one of those. I was like, and Oryx and Crake, if any listeners had read either of those books, the beginning of those did not impress me. Or very frustrating.
I feel like I'm kind of at an unusual spot right now, where just in recent years, I've played a lot more JRPGs in close proximity to each other than I used to. Like, it's just one JRPG after another. And it's been so many that the slow starts, it's not that they don't bother me or not that I won't criticize them, but I've had enough slow starts that have turned into amazing experiences, or at least like I am eventually enjoying this, that I see so many people who maybe aren't used to that, and they're just like, nah, I played 5 hours, 10 hours, and it didn't hook me. And I think to myself, that's reasonable. That's a fair thing to say. But there have also been times, I think especially with Xenoblade Chronicles, where I thought at the end, and Persona 4 I felt this way as well, where it's like that in retrospect, in context, that slow start ended up mattering more than I thought, and doesn't feel like such a hurdle in the beginning. I mean, that's it's on the top of a lot of lists, but Chrono Trigger is right there. Like, that start is so slow, like having to do all this stuff in the fairgrounds, and it's fun and it matters at times. But when I go back to replay that game, I'm always dreading that start. Okay, I disagree with you, but here's what it is. Like, I don't think you're wrong. It is a slow start. It is, the mom coming in, waking you up, all that stuff. But what I like about the beginning of Chrono Trigger is you have agency very quickly. You are doing things very quickly. Like, yes, you're just doing mini games, but you're running around. What I cannot stand in so many JRPGs is you'll have 20 minutes of cutscenes, okay? Yeah. And then they have the goal to do this. Oh, this is bad. This is just awful. They will give you control for 10 steps.
Right.
You'll be like in a dungeon. They'll transport you to some odd place, and you'll walk a little bit, and then you'll have 20 more minutes of cutscenes. That's a dick move. Like, if you're going to do that, I would rather just have you continue the cutscene.
Sure.
Because it takes me out of the moment. And like, why would my character do that? Why would my character move a little bit and then stop? It just doesn't make any sense. It's almost like they feel guilty, but they can't think of a more elegant way of solving that problem. And what I like about Chrono Trigger is I feel like it's doing a great job of introducing you to the tone and world of that game. by giving you the fare. And like all of those games I had such a blast with as a kid. Maybe they don't hold up now, but yeah, at least you're doing something.
From Sundered to Chrono Trigger, we did it.
How do you handle cutscenes, Brendan?
I'm okay with cutscenes. Yeah, I like open world games, so a lot of those cutscenes are predictable. A lot of times, like I'm walking into a space knowing, like, here it comes. Whereas, yeah, I don't play a lot of as many RPGs as you do, as many games where even something like a Metal Gear Solid, I never played for, which Huber is very upset about. But I know that when you said the 10 steps rule, like, that's probably one of the biggest criticisms I heard about that game, and something that I was like, I bet that would be very frustrating.
Yeah,
is when you can't, because I can take a cutscene again if I know if it's like World of Warcraft or something. It's like, oh no, I'm actually anticipating this cutscene. I'm actually going to this area knowing a cool thing is about to happen, and like I'm gonna cash in here and get some good story tidbits. But it's when you can't tell, even something like Life is Strange, which is like almost like 60% cutscenes.
Yeah,
you're like, there's that person, I'm gonna go talk to them. So like if you can gauge the pace of like, I know how long that's going to take, then you can get excited about it. But when it's like, when you're like, free me from the chains of cutscenes, like I don't know when that freedom's coming, then yeah, unfortunately, no matter how good the story is, it can be a bummer.
I think part of it is because of heritage, where like specifically with turn-based JRPGs, I mean, they come from a time where they like during the 8-bit and 16-bit days, they were the ones that had a lot of text, and the way that you did that text was through boxes with words in them. And that heritage is so strong, and those games are so influential, that I feel like in a lot of ways we're kind of paying service to them. And it also drives me nuts where there are so many ways now where you can tell a story in a game. I don't necessarily think one way is right or whatever, but it drives me nuts where I've been listening to this JRPG character ramble on for 15 minutes about all this exposition. It's like, you could have just presented this on the journey. You could have shown me this rather than tell it. Like, you don't need to explain how this device works in such great detail. Just let me use the device, use the animation, use the world around you. Let me see the effect of it rather than and it's something that I like about Final Fantasy 15 is you have lore behind the things that you're summoning these giant creatures, but what makes them so impressive and so interesting is you see how they impact the world. You see the devastation that they cause, and I just want to see more of that. But that's enough JRPG rambling. Brandon, are we ready to move on? Is there anything else you want? We got quite a ways away from Sundered there in that conversation.
No, I mean, I think that's all. I guess for me, I personally, I typically do like start a game intending to finish it.
Yeah.
There's not many times where I'm looking for that out, and most of the times that I don't finish games, it's just essentially because of my job, and like some other game came up that I had to play, and so like I went 5 or 6 months without finishing Final Fantasy 15 because it's like, oh, what happened? It's like, oh yeah, like Zelda came out or something else happened, and I just stopped playing it, and like, oh, Switch is broken. Let me finish Final Fantasy 15 real quick, and it only took me like 2 hours. That's how close I was to the end. But yeah, it's weird because like these are two games, Hey Pikmin and Sundered. Like, okay, I've seen kind of the beginning of this, and I don't know how much farther I actually want to keep doing this when I have so much else I want to play.
Sure. Brandon.
One of my games I can't play more of because it's not out yet. One of the games I got on early access. And one of the games, I think I'm good.
You think you're good?
I think I'm okay.
Speaking of dropping it.
But maybe I should start with that game to continue the trend of games. You're like, nah, all right. I see what you're selling here.
Yeah.
And I think I do not regret. I think if this is your type of game, you should definitely invest. But that is a game that I streamed this week called Yonder, the Cloudcatcher Chronicles. I didn't catch.
That's a mouthful of a name.
I didn't catch any clouds. I don't know when the cloud catching begins. This is a game about resource management. This is a game about going out into the world and collecting things, doing favors for people, and a little Harvest Moon vibe where you can build your own farm, and you can go out and find beasts out in the world and give them certain items, and they'll follow you back to the farm, and then you can milk them, or they allow them to graze and get supplies that way.
Yeah.
It doesn't strike me as being that narrative heavy. It feels more open to do what you want.
Yeah,
so that name doesn't match very well to me.
The Chronicles in there. I definitely thought I was going to be getting a cutscene and then walk 10 steps and then get another cutscene. But they definitely like just run out into the world, and it's not a hard game to learn how to do stuff. The inventory is pretty straightforward, and it's a game that I think one of the things that made me happiest first going into Yonder was they don't want you to be confused at all. You hit your quest thing, and he holds up a crystal that Shadow of the Colossus points a straight line. Third time we brought up Shadow of the Colossus. Does a straight line all the way to like a laser. That's exactly where you're going. Yeah. And while you have that quest thing open, I can see on there what items I need. I can then like click a quest to then see the HUD up constantly. So if I'm going around collecting items, I can see where that is. It doesn't necessarily indicate exactly where you can find some of the items that you need, but you can see the fog on your map when you like haven't uncovered certain areas. So you can see where you haven't been, and when you unlock points of interest in towns where you can buy stuff from people.
So it's just too much information.
There's a lot of stuff, and I think when it got to the busy work point of the game, like after, because we normally stream for 2 hours. So after 2 hours, I was like, okay, if I commit, I'm gonna have to maybe break out some pieces of paper and start writing down like a lot of different things that I need to get, because I don't want to keep like gotta go get this item, go back and turn the quest, go get this item, go back and turn the quest. I kind of want to just start doing big loops around the map and then just gobble up all the items that I can, and then like go back in town for the big like cash in, and there's no combat in the game. I don't know if they add combat later via like some kind of ranged thing you can do, but like you're really just going. Everybody's happy. Like everything in this world is. They just don't know where to find things.
The animals look very happy.
The animals are extremely happy. The vibes in this game are extremely jolly. The music's very happy. The art style is simplistic, a little bit more so than the Breath of the Wild, but the lighting is very impressive. The frame rate ran really well, and you have a lantern at night, and it wiggles, and so the light loves to just bounce off everything in the environment. And yeah, it's pretty straightforward. It's very calm. Like there were some people. It's interesting because it's one of those games where a lot of people in chat that immediately were like, crap, I'm buying this. Like you could just kind of tell right away. And this is it is in my wheelhouse, but it is not a game right now, like you're saying, with everything else happening, and trying to take advantage of this time before we hit October, November to like maybe get some other things off my backlog done.
Yeah, with how does it do that sin where it explains things that you just don't need explained? Like does it have pages of text of like, all right, we're going to tell you about how to save.
Not too much.
Go into this bin. Okay,
it's
not like that.
No, it's so straightforward what you have to do and where you need to go to do it. It just kind of throws you out into the world.
Okay.
It actually has a very Breath of the Wild moment where you come out of a cave and you see the world for the first time. And the camera pans back.
Yeah.
Like it's almost identical. But at the same time, like it is a smaller game. It is a cheaper game than others. So it doesn't strike me that this game needs to be a very active, combat-heavy Dragon Quest Builders, Portal Knights RPG. That this is for the collectors. This is for people that just love to go and explore a world and maybe don't play games enough to be good at combat, but still like exploring and still like discovering environments.
In a way, though, it's kind of related to your wheelhouse because you like games that end up having a lot of collecting or a lot of like, okay, I'm going to do this task, and then this task is going to feed into that. Filling up meters, collecting things, progressing, building stuff. What doesn't this game have that gets you on the hook the way that maybe some of those, like a Fantasy Life would?
I think maybe it might be like my ownership of it. Like you can customize your character, but there's not... And I found some new outfits, but none of them were really like driving me crazy at the beginning of the game, where it's just like, oh, I can get outfits? Okay, I really want to make this character look cool.
Yeah.
You have your farm, but like you can't go inside. There's like a door, and I can see there's windows, so it looks like there's an interior, but I can't go in there. So it's like,
weird.
It's less about like, I'm going to hang out on my farm, whereas like Builders is all of that. Builders is like, I'm just going to chill here in my area and watch people go around. I think they're constantly like, go over yonder, just keep exploring. So it's like the world itself is really cozy, and it's not just this one area. And I think when you have a game like Portal Knights, you have something like Minecraft or Dragon Quest Builders where there is a threat. Like I definitely feel like a comfort when I'm home, that like my home is kind of like a protection, or that I need to come back here because it will be attacked or be in danger from some way. All it does is like the animal, the Yonder version of the Animal Crossing weeds is poop. If you go back to your farm, there's just little piles of poop all over the place.
Yeah.
And so it was funny, like, you know, being gone for half an hour and coming back and like poop. So I had to run around and clean that up. But again, it's so jolly that it wasn't necessary for me. You know, it was like, this is a game where if I was just like really, really stressed and popped it up and didn't want to play something action heavy or something that I needed to play for any like, you know, Easy Allies obligation, but just like, I just want to just relax and have a laser tell me where I need to go and go there and do a thing.
Sure. Question for both of you. You mentioned that you're raising a farm in this game, and like Harvest Moon, Stardew Valley, games where you're responsible for this land, you're growing things, you're building things. Those games are really popular and completely absorbing. Why do you think it is that farming in a video game is enjoyable to so many people who may not have any actual interest in farming?
I think the thing for me that's so satisfying, and I'll let you speak in a second, Blood, is, you know, it's one thing to make yourself more powerful in a game, that like what I have to show for, you know, the last 34 hours is these stats that have made me really powerful, and look, I can go destroy things. And not to be like a hippie about it, but like it is a different kind of power that like I have built something up that is then creating even more resources.
Yeah.
You know, that like I can take something from nothing and make it into something. It's almost kind of like crafting also as well, like in an MMO. And I remember like in Final Fantasy XI where like I had to go and like to another player and like give that player materials and have them make something, and like the expertise that they had, like clearly like the work that they put in and the skill that they had developed, and then what they could produce out of that was its own weird form of like badassness. You know, like that to me is on the same level of seeing somebody with like really cool shoulder pads that has a big axe that can go and do a lot of damage. But that, yeah, that's me. What's your take?
Different kind of power.
Yeah, I think the one that I spent the most time with, where I like really got into it for a long amount of time, was Harvest Moon: A Wonderful Life on GameCube. Mm-hmm. And I think like a lot of it has to do, I think, with watching things grow and develop, and like seeing these things sort of, you know, like you influence them, but they're also kind of going on their own, and it's like, okay, it's like you're establishing this path of like how these plants are going to grow, how these animals are going to grow. And then I also think there is something to sort of that routine of it, and like, again, like you were talking about with Pikmin, like that sort of planning, okay, what am I going to do with my day to get to this point where I can like make this weird blend of strawberries and tomatoes, this hybrid plant thing, you know, or whatever it is that you've set your mind to that you want to accomplish. It's like, this is a long-term goal, and to do that, like I have to figure out like what steps are going to get me there on my daily routine, and I have to do my daily routine every day to keep things going. And sometimes, like I think sometimes with Harvest Moon, that can feel like kind of therapeutic and really relaxing, whereas I feel like I kind of felt the opposite with, say, The Sims. Like, I felt like those loops were just, like, way too fast. And, like, what? Like, you got to go pee again. Like, come on, just finish cooking the dinner right now. Like, I don't understand. But, yeah, so I kind of, like, I played those games around the same time. And it's like, I just very different experiences with how much I really, like, got into each one.
This might make me sound like a psycho, but I think part of the reason those things that we maybe wouldn't have interest in real life is because of the access to information. Like if you were to say, okay, build a farm, take care of animals, grow all these things, there's so much uncertainty. Whereas what I love about video games, and it's not just like farming or building, you can extend this to a bunch of different things, is if I do this to this thing, this is exactly what's going to happen. Here's the status of this thing. Green means good, yellow means it's okay, red means it's bad. And there's just something comforting, I think, about having that information where you know exactly what you're doing, how it's affecting other people. And I think it's what makes things like, just to use an easy example that pops into the top of my head, right? Like that's what's fun about like Persona or games where you are like a school kid, because in your own school life, you don't necessarily, like, you always have those moments where it's like, I wonder how my friends really feel about me or this situation, whereas in those sort of like games, you can quantify that, and there's comfort in that quantification.
Well, I also think there's a matter of these, and you know, maybe there's some out there that I haven't played that are a little bit more punishing, but I feel like they don't have that kind of risk that you would have from a real life farm, right? Like you don't wake up at 4 o'clock every morning and put backbreaking work in just for you to find out that the prices on these things have gone drastically down, and you're not going to make any money this year whatsoever, and you might lose your farm entirely.
If there's gonna be like no rain that year, or like if even the land is good, like which you don't. If you're building a new farm, like you don't know this if the soil is gonna produce good results until like multiple seasons.
Yeah, that's a great point. Like you can just start over. You can delete your save and go on. But there's also, I think, along those lines, you can experiment the way that you can't with your own life. Like in your own life, you have very real pressures, like you were describing, where you have to commit. Whereas that is what's so great about video games is you can get it wrong until you get it right, and there's no huge punishment. So, all right, cool. Well, that's Yonder. Not super grabbing you. Is there anything else that is grabbing you?
I think it should grab you if you look at it and can tell right away, like, oh, I think that's my jam. And that's it. That's how I got introduced to it. I was at PAX and just saw it in the corner of my eye, and just the art style. I was like, ooh. I just saw him running across the field with a lantern. I was like, okay.
But you have too many.
You got me.
There are too many things competing for Brandon Jones' attention
Definitely.
at this time.
It's definitely a very pretty game, yeah.
And one thing, a game that I had not, I don't think I'd heard of, or like when I'd heard of it, I hadn't put 2 and 2 together, but it's Oxygen Not Included from Clay Entertainment, which also did Don't Starve.
Yeah.
And I thought I would love Don't Starve. Speaking of growing things and managing,
really
being
like
distracted and managing stuff. Yeah. I like the principles of Don't Starve. I just didn't get like addicted to Don't Starve. And I think one of the things that frustrated me was I can head off in a direction for days and Don't Starve and not find the thing I need.
Yeah.
Like I can, just from bad luck, a playthrough of mine can go south. And I know that kind of plays into the like Tim Burton-y, like everyone's going to die sometime kind of vibe of Don't Starve that like they like to play up. But Oxygen Not Included seems like more my cup of tea. And it has the same like 2D cartoony art style. The characters are extremely impressive, but it's more of like a sci-fi bent. It's not as like fantasy Lovecraftian as Don't Starve is. And have you seen this game at all? Are you not familiar?
Yeah, I don't know what it looks like.
This is why this Rim Trip has kind of been a treat to me, because there's so many games that like I just have to visualize it based on your words.
And there was a table. There was a series of games by all the other games booths. So this is like in between Xbox and Capcom and Blizzard and Nintendo. And then here's like 8 big screens with like 4 of the games I had never heard of before. And one of them was Oxygen Not Included. And I'm like, I think I remember hearing that title, but it is side-scrolling. I guess like not necessarily Metroidvania-ish, because there's not like a story. Like I'm not trying to like save like the world tree or anything. Like I'm just excavating this cave with people. So it like kind of reminds me of, kind of scratches the itch from SteamWorld Dig a little bit. But what's fun about it is basically like imagine SteamWorld Dig, but you're not controlling that character. You are just giving that person commands. So I have 3 scientists that are in this base, and the title comes into play because I have to make the areas breathable if they're really going to like explore like more into the cave. And I can give them commands like sweep, which picks up items off the ground, or dig, which like they use lasers to actually like knock parts of the cave wall down. And then basically like block by block gridding out the map, I give them commands. So if I'm like, hey, I want to build a cave down there, I'm literally going to map up the entire cave. And then I'm like, okay. And the 2 of the guys go and start working on it. And then I'm like, okay, and I want that person to go and build this thing over here. And then after you're done building that, do this. Wait a minute. Swap the priority of those 2 things. Build that first, then build that.
So this is a broad comparison, but would you say it's kind of like Fallout Shelter in a way?
A little bit. Fallout Shelter seems more towards the specific types of rooms that you can build, where it's a lot more like Don't Starve, where like they have the weird kind of shaped like a certain desk that you got to build, and then once that desk is built, now that allows you to build other types of things. They tell you to build like a house right away. They're like, these people have to go to the bathroom. And then as you level up, you can get even more people in there and assign them to do more things.
A big thing about Don't Starve is how obtuse building some of those things can be. How difficult it is to figure out what you need and then where to get that stuff. Is that kind of the process here? Do they point you more in the direction where you need to build this thing? This is kind of where you get...
The first 18 steps or so were very clear, and then that 19th one got me. I think it's like a 15-minute demo, And yeah, I had like 3 or 4 minutes left, and I was like, I don't know how to do what you want. I think it was when power distribution. I think when it started to get into that,
Sure.
where I built a couple things, and they're like, it doesn't have power, and I was like, okay. And so I like built a generator, and then they're like, you got to connect them, and I connected them, and they're like, it doesn't have power. And I'm like, I don't know what's going on. They're like, I got bad reception
Yeah.
here
I
at
think I
Comic-Con,
ran
so I
into-
can't like look it up and like.
I think I ran into some similar troubles with Fallout 4. And
Yep.
like, yeah.
I definitely did.
But it's in early access right now. You can, I believe it's $25 or $24 to buy into early access. They very much indicate they're like, this game is, we're still working on this, so you're gonna have bugs, and we're gonna be making updates to it and changes. The reason why those 18 steps were clear is if you go into any of the menus of the resources that you need, it'll be a very clear like red text where it's like you don't have power, and then if you mouse over that, it'll be like, to get power, build this. And if you build that and have an issue, then you can see a more like concerning red text that'll let you know like some error. But the big thing that I like about Oxygen Not Included that I don't think Don't Starve needs, but was a thing that was frustrated me or kind of pulled me out of Don't Starve, is it's got a pause button, which is just like, it's like you're saying with like RPGs.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I can just say stop and then like zoom out and look at everything and then zoom back in and be like, okay, when you wake up, okay, do this now and do that. It'll be fun. It looks like a game where you're supposed to restart and try, start over and try to, just like Don't Starve, and like try to get as many resources as you can. And I'm looking forward when I get to the point where just looking at a certain vein, I can see like, that's copper, that's that. So even just at the very beginning, it's like, okay, I want to like get a ladder up there and start mining there, because that'll, just like in Minecraft when you would like see a block after 10 or 15 hours of play, where you're like, oh, that's coal. I can identify that right away. And yeah, it looks like a really interesting strategy game. I'm looking forward to getting better at it and getting the most out of. And from the gameplay trailer that I watched on Steam, there were a lot of I don't know why you would dig straight into a big pile of water and have water just like it's very clearly water right there. Like I don't know why you'd make that mistake, but it's kind of fun to see them freak out and like run out of oxygen and like suffocate.
Were you playing this on a PC?
On a PC, yeah.
Okay.
And I believe it's just on Steam for right now.
Was it pretty easy to, because in a game like this where building things and keeping people alive and managing all that stuff, like was the interface clean? Was it easy to access things? Was it easy to understand? When you were like, where is this? You knew exactly how to get there?
I played on a big screen, so I had a lot of real estate there. So like if you're playing on a smaller monitor, it might be kind of tough like to read things, or I don't know how much you can modify the HUD because it fit on the monitor that I just downloaded it immediately when I got back and played it for like 5 minutes just to get it up and running. But I love that about conventions, just actually not, it wasn't a trailer. I didn't get an email from somebody to tell me to check something out. I literally just looked at a television, was like, what's that? And I had to and the names were actually kind of tricky to find. And I was like, Oxygen Not Included. Okay. Yeah. And then found out, it's the Don't Starve people. And like, I think I should have heard about this game, but I think because it's an early access, they're like, there's a lot of moving pieces to this, and we want to make sure everything is balanced and fun, before we maybe start doing a big marketing push. But if you're curious to check it out, if that's your type of game.
It sounds cool. Yeah. This very much seems like if any Easy Ally was going to play this, it would be Brandon Jones, and that would be Marvel Powers.
Yes. Marvel Powers United VR.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Which is exclusive to the Oculus.
Which
is a bummer because that's the one VR system I don't have. And seems actually very custom built for the Oculus controller. I was like, I don't know if you couldn't. This wouldn't be as fun if I was on the Vive controller or if I was on the PSVR controllers. Maybe with the PS4 controller. You could be Rocket Raccoon or Hulk or Captain Marvel or Deadpool.
Question.
And, yes.
Did you pick Rocket Raccoon?
No.
Okay. Never mind then.
Was that the wrong choice?
No, I was just gonna ask: is if when you pick Rocket Raccoon, is everything like? Are you?
Yeah, you're shorter, and Hulk, you're bigger.
Nice.
And Captain Marvel could fly, which was cool. I was like, maybe I should have picked Captain Marvel because she could fly around. But I don't know in VR like how that controls.
My dreams are coming true.
But played Deadpool.
Yeah.
And asked right away. He was like, "Who do you want to be?" I was like, "Deadpool." And he was like, "Okay, well, wait until you select your character because the last person to go, okay, I'm ready." That person automatically gets to be Deadpool. And so waited and jumped in, and there is a little bit of awkward VRness to some of the animation because like Hulk's arms are literally this dude's arms, so there's a little bit of like wobbliness depending on like where he's facing and where like his arms are going. But at the same time, if you're Hulk, you can just pick people up and like swing them.
Yeah.
So it's just neat like seeing in VR have him just cup a guy's head and just like seeing his legs dangle and he just like throws them across the room.
Is it just like violent screams the whole time?
Yeah, it's basically just like playing Marvel Ultimate Alliance, a very, very streamlined Marvel Ultimate Alliance. in VR, like just moving room to room. And as we started to get to the end, I don't know if Hulk was strategizing with me because we couldn't talk to each other. But we were definitely letting him go in first, and have everybody like draw fire, and then like being a ranged characters Deadpool, I primarily did my dual Uzis. But just kind of like, putting enemies between me and Hulk so he would absorb all the damage, and I could just kind of peek around. Wasn't very difficult, though. We fought Ronan at the end from Guardians of the Galaxy, and he went down pretty quick. And so I'd be curious to get some friends in there that not only enjoyed the game, but played as characters that they like, characters that were varied, and like maybe up that difficulty. I'd be curious to like play like a tricky version of that, because we were just like, especially because we were like, when you have Rocket and Deadpool and Hulk in there, like Captain Marvel, personality-wise, is like a little more centered, but those are three very over the top,
right?
Shoot first, ask questions later type of characters.
I have nothing but the utmost sympathy for VR developers, because they not only have to make a game that is interesting and challenging and fun, but they also have to be like, okay, this is interesting and fun and challenging on its own. Is it going to be fun, interesting, and challenging to somebody who has no idea how to use this technology?
Yeah.
Like, it's just, you cannot assume anything. Like, how is this going to make this person feel or whatever? And so it being easy doesn't surprise me.
And for the demo purposes,
right?
Yeah, but for the final version, I'm curious if you can crank that up. But movement was very smooth. So there were a couple of things about this game that were specific to the Oculus controller that I'm curious how it's going to translate to other VR systems if it eventually becomes not exclusive to Oculus. And one of them was they both have analog sticks, and so I could like move Deadpool just with this analog stick. And I was nervous, like, I don't know if that'll make me queasy or not, and like, not at all. I loved it. I was just hold up one machine gun and just like circle around people. And you can also teleport, and what's cool about Deadpool, and I don't know specifically how that works with the other characters, is if I teleported and you can see the icon, he would just be like standing there if I'm like, I'm gonna go over there. But if it was close enough to an enemy, you'd see him like do a little kick, and so I could teleport over to somebody and kick him and like knock him back right out of the teleport. And then the Oculus has two triggers. And I don't know if this is the way like all shooters work, like something like Super Hot on Oculus. I don't know if it works this way specifically, but there's the middle finger and the your index finger. Index finger fires, middle finger grabs. So to actually hold on to your machine guns, you have to have that middle finger down the whole time. So if you drop them, he'll drop the guns, which wasn't annoying to me. I never like did that accidentally, but it kind of made me feel like a badass.
Yeah.
So like after I was done, hold out the machine guns, drop them in front of me, then reach behind, grab the katanas, pull those out, and then attack somebody with that, and then like throw the katanas, reach to my waist, pull the machine guns out again.
Are you
fire
fighting
independently?
Because you mentioned Marvel Ultimate Alliance, are you fighting a lot of enemies at once?
Yeah, and they're all over the place. So there's like coming in from roof, like from the ceiling, and from under the floor. And
so next question.
Yeah.
With this being a VR game and you fighting a bunch of enemies at once and being a superhero and doing all these crazy things, was the performance consistent?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like I said, there was just movement was a little
Sure.
janky. So like, I think when it was action heavy, it looked like Marvel characters fighting, and when we were all like in the elevator together, like, hey, like it looked really silly. But I think the thing that it surprised me the most was movement. I think when I first saw it, it seemed kind of like just a bunch of boss fights. It kind of seemed like, oh, we're in an arena and stuff's happening, but like actually moving into areas and getting in elevators and seeing like vistas and like I don't know if again we fought Ronan, so I don't know if the villains that we were the fodder that we were taking out, I don't know if that was also Guardians related or if we were in a Guardians complex, or how important the story really is. So if you're like, oh, I'm curious to see the campaign or who the leads are in this story, or like what the how this ties into the comics, this is literally just like I'm Hulk, and like for just being that, I was impressed. Actually, I came out of it enjoying it a little more than I thought I would. And Deadpool was being smarmy the whole time. Had a couple fun lines at the end when the screen came up for everybody's score. He was like, "Thanks for taking my kills, everybody. Thanks." Mm-hmm. So like he had some attitude there. Didn't hear anyone else though, which I thought was kind of a bummer. Like if they had one lines, like I think you could only just hear yourself.
Okay.
But it's not out yet, so I don't know if that was just for demo purposes. But was surprised with that Marvel VR there.
Cool.
So good job.
I am bummed that it is only coming to Oculus because I don't have one.
Me too.
Yeah.
But hopefully, yeah.
Well,
it'll make the switch.
This is a softball question, but I am really curious.
Sure.
You might be one of the only allies where I don't know your favorite Marvel superhero.
I don't think it's something I think about that often.
It's a personal question.
I'm gonna put you on the spot. It could be superhero or organization. of superheroes?
Wow. On the spot, out of nowhere.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe Storm. I don't know.
Ooh.
That is a really cool answer.
That is a very cool.
Yeah.
Storm is very cool.
Yeah. Storm is very cool. Like Daniel Bloodworth. Why Storm?
I grew up in Florida. A lot of lightning. I don't know.
Why is Storm your favorite superhero? I grew up in Florida. I'm never going to forget that. Okay. Brandon, you have one more game on here that I was like, please talk about.
Oh, right.
this.
Yes.
Please talk about this because
Sure.
I want to know everything.
So this is the Ben conversation.
Yeah.
You can also get the Huber conversation in the Wolfenstein, the new Colossus preview that we just put up that you can find on youtube.com/easyallies. But I will skip the part that you've already heard because you know for the stuff from E3.
Yeah.
So we can just skip right past that. So the part that I played, there were two very distinct sections with a cutscene in between. One was the street that you have seen from the trailers, which I found out is in New Mexico, just outside of Roswell.
Okay.
And the second part was me getting aboard a train and taking that train to one of the, I think it was Area 52, to one of those like secret underground bases, and fulfilling a quest at the end of that train and fighting a big boss at the end. But the city was really great. It was neat to see because and Huber and I were trying to recall if there's not many like normal places where granted I'm like a spy, so like I'm not supposed to be here, so I'm like pretending that I'm like, yeah, Nazis, I'm cool with all of this, but like
Right.
I don't remember a lot of that in the first Wolfenstein: A New Order. We could see like hub areas, people live here normally.
Yeah, there wasn't a lot of that. There were a lot of quiet moments, like okay, I'm at the prison, I'm just talking to this guy at the prison, or I'm on the train talking to this person on the train, and the way that it used those pauses, I guess the normal area is sort of that hidden base that you're in with everybody. That's the most normal area.
But that's the rebellion, basically. That's you and all these like resistance fighters.
Exactly.
And so it's kind of your own version of normal.
Right.
And so
Exactly.
one interesting scene was, Strawberry Milkshake Man.
Yes.
So I walk into that diner, and before Milkshake Man comes in, there is a mother and her son, and she's asking him what he did at school, and he's just kind of like not really into it. He's like, I don't want to learn German. Like, I don't really care about this type of history.
Yeah.
And she's like, you have to learn that. It's very important. Like I you can sense in her voice, like, I don't like it either, but like, you have to do that. And when the soldier comes in, she ordered a couple cheeseburgers and something. And when the Nazi comes in, she's like, oh, we'll get food someplace else, and leaves. And so it was interesting getting the vibe of this person that's, obviously not a soldier like Blazkowicz, but is not going to fight the resistance, is not going to fight this regime, but certainly doesn't enjoy it and isn't happy about it and is trying to be very careful. Like, I imagine just that person in Westeros that's like, I'll go to another restaurant, it's fine. It's like, I don't need to be here when the Hound is fighting somebody, I'm out. And so just getting those little tiny walks of life in this new crazy world where they're at like a Nazi parade clapping, and there's swastikas everywhere, and the Ku Klux Klan is like learning how to speak German. It's it's a very interesting, lots of interesting flavor. Just non-cutscene, just in the world. Go up, listen to the conversation they're having, read the poster. So love that kind of world building, and loved it in the first game.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about that Rebellion HQ, like going into the different rooms and seeing how each person had the room arranged. You got a lot of sense of who they were, and in this, since you're kind of in a bigger, more open area, do you feel like you can just sort of hear conversations that are going on and get a sense of the world? Like, are those interesting, or is it a lot of no, you have to be here at this specific moment in order to get that stuff?
No, it seemed like they were contextual. So if I like got near, then that interesting conversation would pop up, or and they hinted at, I think it was just because for demo purposes, they're like, we don't want to, that's not the type of demo we're trying to show off today.
Right.
But it sounds like in the full game, you might be able to just pull out a gun and start shooting people on that street.
I see.
And that, all of the NPCs would react accordingly. And so it'd be interesting to see, kind of getting more out into the world, not only, being in the United States, which we weren't before, but just them taking this concept to so many other levels, and you seeing like how it has affected the world. 'Cause that to me is like the greatest payoff of this concept is how we see how the soldiers would fight and how they would react and what they need to do to normalize things. But what are the struggles of just the average American, the average European? It's just like gotta go to work, gotta try to make a life happen in this just crazy upside down world.
Yeah, having played through New Order again recently, it's been said many times, but they don't make shooters like that anymore. They don't make shooters where they create you get a whole world. You get like when you play through Call of Duty or something, you have objectives. You don't really have a world. It's like
You're a lone wolf.
Yeah, this level that you're crawling through
Yeah.
exists because you need to accomplish this thing. You wouldn't be here were it not to do this thing, and that was what is so great about Wolfenstein. And even just like one of the most powerful scenes for me is early on, whereas BJ, you're at this asylum and you're seeing time pass, and you're seeing these people, and just those. You realize like you care so much about what you're fighting for because the game takes a look back and it says you're not the most important thing here. Like you just even like Huber talks about it all the time, but that beginning scene with Half-Life, some people now say, oh, that's too slow, I don't want to be a scientist, but it's like, no, you need that to see how bad you fucked up everything.
When we were talking about the mundaneness, like whether that's
Right.
required or not, like how many hours should it take for me to get into something like that? I thought Half-Life, as setting that up, both Half-Life 1 and 2,
Yeah.
of just kind of having these very like seemingly normal openings, but like when the shit does hit the fan, like then it's really impactful.
Yeah, and I think it's easy though to take things in New Order and call them mundane, but none of it was mundane. I mean, like New Order would always have those great, like you'd be at a prison, but it's like, okay, here's a prison with a giant mech walking around.
Yeah.
Like there was always be some visual cue that would very keenly remind you how unsettling this
So
was.
the last part of this demo was very much not mundane. This is me going through a train and picking up laser guns off of giant enemies and using them to melt other Nazis, and got that awesome shotgun. Actually, the hallway that we saw from that trailer that we thought was so great, which is just like headshot.
Yeah.
And one control thing that I picked up that, unfortunately, man, when I was cutting the preview, I was like, I don't know when I stumbled across that thing in the buttons. I couldn't find it. But you can actually pick what you want to have in each hand. So the weapon that you're using, your left hand and your right hand are separate. So you can like actually like bring up your left hand and be like pistol, and bring up your right hand and be like, automatic or shotgun or something, and then just go in with those with one trigger controlling either hand. So that was interesting. I didn't mess around with it because I'm like, I'm got the shotgun, I'm good. A lot of the weapons that I had were two-handed, so I'm like, I'm fine with just using this.
Okay. I feel like you kind of just answered this question already, but one of my criticisms of New Order is they give you all of these different ways to play, and part of that was through the perk system, where it's like, do this to get this new ability, and it's like, doing that is not fun. I don't want to do that. And I like
Huber brought up the same exact point,
Yeah.
and didn't necessarily get into that because it was just one level, so like didn't
Sure.
necessarily see like the progression of that.
Okay, so you don't know if a system like that is returning
I don't
at
know,
all?
yeah.
Okay.
And yeah, those two guns were just stuff that I picked up and found in the game, and
Yeah.
I was not leveling anything up. But
How did that shotgun feel? Like every weapon in New Order felt great to me.
it feels super good. The
Okay.
only thing that was frustrating was I ran out of ammo. I finally got to like the last part, and if I had all the time in the world, if I was just reviewing the game or just staying up late and just like, I don't feel like sleeping, I'll play this game for another hour, then I wouldn't have been, it wouldn't frustrate me, but I'm at this demo, I'm on borrowed time, like other people are coming in for the 11:30 session, I gotta wrap this up.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of hustling through some areas and getting a little frustrated because I'm like rapidly searching under, bed sheets and stuff, like I just gotta be shotgun shells in here somewhere. And so that got a little frustrating near the end, but it was difficult. And Huber said he played the E3 demo on normal, and I played both of the demos at E3 and this one click below normal.
Okay.
And it was still tricky. I had to run by the giant robot that came in at the end just to get the last cutscene, just to like see how the whole thing wrapped up.
On this train, was there any chance of you getting through with stealth? Or is it like, no, I have to blast my way through here?
Sure, definitely in the beginning.
Okay.
Definitely when I first boarded the train and I popped up, they hadn't seen me yet, and and there were definitely parts. I remember there's one like underground part in one of the compartments of the train where there were 3 guys in there, and I managed to take all 3 out before somebody had spotted me. And certainly, because you're saying like they don't make shooters like that anymore, like it does feel like an old school shooter, and so there's less of it's a little bit more predictable. But to me, in a good way, if there's like a big sizable offensive that's going to be coming at me, that like I can maybe do a little more exploration and find like, oh, there's a whole crate of grenades right here. Okay, I know those 8 guys are just in that hallway waiting for me, so maybe I'll lob that in there, or make sure I have the right gun by the time I get to that point. It's a different type of shooter, but I dig it.
Do you still have to manually select the grenades and then throw them, or is there now a grenade button or any sort of streamlined stuff like that?
I think the biggest streamlined thing, like I said, was that choosing your weapon for different hands, because one thing I remember from the early game is that if you wanted to dual wield, it was just another part of that big wheel.
Yes, it was.
And that wheel for me was so big that like the difference between 2 guns was very small.
Yep.
And so a lot of times I would try to go for 1 gun, and that was the grand Far Cry 4 New Order debate. And one of the things I liked in Far Cry was that it was just north, south, east, west. So if I wouldn't even have to look at that wheel, and I knew exactly what weapon I was going to get. Where there was a little bit of a 4 or 5 second delay of like, wait, okay, there we go. And in that crazy game where you're just like people flying, in from all over the place, sometimes like I would die in that moment where I would or it would slow me down or add difficulty to a system that maybe didn't need it. And so because you can, there's no longer like, do you want the shotgun or 2 shotguns? Like the wheel's not that big. There were less room for error in actually memorizing where that corner of the circle that gun is and getting to it quicker.
A conversation that I got into with somebody is they were worried about sort of like tripping out on drugs, and that it might be the humor which was present in New Order might be a little bit hokier here. And I thought about it and I was like, they're kind of right. Like there is very dark humor, and there's definitely some very intentional goofiness to New Order, but all of that is kind of seated in this is a terrible thing happening. Did you get any sense of the humor there? Were there people telling jokes, or
definitely
did it feel different from New Order?
The guy that gets you into Area 52 is a conspiracy theorist.
I see.
And so there's kind of a funny scene of him being like, I mean, I don't know if it's aliens, but it's probably aliens. And Blazkowicz is like, I have 100% confirmation it is not aliens. And he's like, well, are you sure? And like, I think what they do a good job of in that game is knowing what characters are funny and what characters aren't, and when funny characters can be serious and how to make that poignant, and vice versa. And so going to meet this conspiracy theorist, when I was talking to Huber about it, he started laughing, and like he knew right away. Like he'd played New Order, and so if I tell him like I'm in Roswell, there's a guy who believes in UFOs, you can kind of picture him like he's got an office behind his diner.
Sure,
you can kind of see it in your head. But the scene going into this, where I meet the gal with the fro and like some other people from the first game that you might recognize, that scene was very serious and very much kind of setting the tone for like how this new group would work. I don't know if like the base we were in was part of the new hub, or how that system's gonna work in the new game. But when you from the demo from E3, when you bump into Anya, very serious, and I think they do a good job of, like I said, like having them, if they do have humor, make it feel true to the character. You have the one guy with like the learning disability whose like head is like like knocked in. That like he's not really like funny. He's kind of heartwarming. It's a tricky balance, but I think they have enough characters for each kind of slice of life.
They're not shoving it into areas that it's not forced.
Yeah,
sure.
And like if they do it smartly, like they did in New Order, if you want that comic relief, if you're interested in engaging with those characters, then go into their room and start talking to them. Like add them to your experience. But if you're like, I hate that guy, then you can skip them. It's not that important.
Blood, have you played New Order?
I haven't played it yet, no.
Please. Please play it. It's so good. All of you, please play it. Blood, you have played something that I am ready to talk about.
Ooh.
And I don't know if you've played it or not, Brandon, so I guess we'll find out. But I have been, more than I thought, I knew I was going to like it, but adoring Splatoon 2. I really like it a lot. And Blood, I know that you're reviewing it and that you've played more than I have. But it's hard to describe, I think, why I'm liking Splatoon 2 a lot more than Splatoon 1.
There's a lot of subtle differences that I probably personally don't even know the answers to all of. I know even when the previews went up, somebody did like a side-by-side of just like character models and animation things, and there was so much more there than I realized. Because like just looking at it, it's like yeah, it looks like the same game, whatever. It's like no, not actually. They've done a lot more to like really bring those characters to life than you immediately recognize.
Yeah, that's it. It's a hard thing to put into words, but like this, part of what made Splatoon so successful is its vibe, and that vibe is just cashed in on even more in Splatoon 2. Just walking around Inkopolis, it's a place where I can't remember the last time a game has crippled me so much where I like the style of the clothes so much, but I also really care about the stats, and I will be schizophrenic about which one I want more, where it's like, well, I'm not going to care about stats, I just want to look as cool as possible. And you can scrub the stats and re-roll for new abilities and stuff, but I find myself constantly bouncing between like, I just want to look cool, or I'll go into a match and lose and be like, no, I need to look less cool for the stats. And to me, that's the mark of good aesthetic design, where I am making that decision, where I'm not just like the stats are the like getting that quicker respawn or having your ink be saved a little bit matters enough that I'm thinking about it, but also, gosh, I just want to look fresh too.
Have you seen the one that I used on the stream, the bowling outfit?
No, I haven't.
It's pretty great. Like, you got these red leather shoes, like these smoky wingtips or something like that, and then like an actual bowling outfit. Like you can even like rotate the character and look at his back and like see like it like some kind of Octarian like rolling through a couple of pins. And then I've got the aviator sunglasses on. Oh, and the shirt comes with like the one glove, the bowling glove. So it was a great looking outfit, and so it's been really.
I need to see your character.
It's been really hard to to like go back. It's like, yeah, but these other shoes I had, these sneakers had like really good stats. And then like also keeping in mind that like I want to see more options, and like you've got to use items to unlock abilities. Because you've got the main, but then you've got the 1 to 3 sub abilities that are there that are just question marks until you start using them and get those dice rolls.
I love that you can just walk up to people, and I mean you can do this in Splatoon 1 as well, but that you can just order their gear. Yeah. And it becomes this almost like game of jealousy where it's like, well, I have to have that. And like,
well, you see people with like the crazy like robot suits and then the samurai helmets and things. I'm like, where did that come from? I haven't seen that yet. Yeah.
Right. And just talking about the Inkopolis, this area that you're walking around in, it's not big. It's very, very small. Yeah. But because you can do these things like walk around and check out people's gear, you want to do that. You want to like go and see the different shops, and it's compact enough that that's not a pain in the butt to do. But there's enough within it that it's interesting, and it's like it doesn't become a chore. But you can also, if you're sick of that, you just open a menu and get into the lobby right away. And again, a lot of this stuff is in Splatoon 1, but just the consideration of the design, like I haven't had to wait at all to get into a match. Like, I'm in the lobby.
Right.
It's filled up. I'm doing a match. That match is 3 minutes long. If I want to continue, I can immediately get into the next match, do that, and there's just a flow. Like, they've grinded it down into such a point where you can be in for as much or as little as you want to, and it's fun either way.
Yeah.
And that's super great. But I think
I think with that, I think that's where this balance comes in with some of these choices that seem weird when you don't consider that speed.
Right.
It feels weird that for any 2 given hours you can only play on 2 maps on a mode.
Yeah.
And it feels weird that when you're in a lobby waiting for the match to start, you can't change weapons. But I think both of those are for exactly that reason.
Right, to just speed things up.
Just jump straight into a match, just to have 8 people always grouped up, so that all it takes is getting like, okay, 3 or 4 more people to pop in. There you go. Like, they're going to be on this map.
And the addition of something like Salmon Run, I think alleviates some of those things that bothered me a little bit in Splatoon 1, where you would also have the rotation of maps, and I would get sick of a map before it was ready to rotate. But now, just because of this extra mode, I find myself bouncing around between, okay, I'm going to do regular battles, and then I'm going to do ranked battles, and then I'm going to do a little bit of Salmon Run, and then I'm going to do story mode. And just having Salmon Run there, and I think it being as good as it is, and having it like the way that it's structured, makes it so I feel like in Splatoon 2 I have a lot to do and I'm enjoying all of it. And that's so essential in a game like this, where every component of it is interesting. Like doing all of the different rank modes, I like all of them. I want to do all of them. I'm okay with them rotating because they're all fun. And with Salmon Run, like, what do you think of Salmon Run before I go into?
No, I think Salmon Run is great. I think the one thing that is really that I haven't like put a pin on why it's happening is why Salmon Run is restricted to these schedules.
Yes,
towards like why it's okay. This day it's like 5 a.m. to 5 p.m. and then tomorrow there's 11 p.m. to 11 a.m. and like. Why isn't it just there all the time exactly? Like, I know that they have daily bonuses that change up, and I know that every time they start a new session, they're like, you're on a different map with a different selection of weapons, and so every day it's going to be a little bit different.
Right.
But I don't understand why there are times where you just can't play it. It's just not there. Doors closed.
I think they're trying to do this thing where it's like the daily bonuses, like you said, or it's like, this is this month's gear. They're trying to make it feel special, and I think that's okay, but the times don't make any sense at all. Like, it's not I'm always wondering to myself, like, okay, why can't I play it now? What was the time again exactly? And I think if I have to have that question with your mode, you're doing something wrong.
Right.
Like,
they do have a simple way on the menu to like always see is like, okay, this is now, this is soon, this is coming up. Like, you can see almost a whole week in advance of when it's going to be active. It's just weird that there's downtime.
Yeah, but I think that's the thing is, like, I can't figure out why exactly it is that time. Like, what do you gain by doing that? And they have the Splatfest, like they have those special events where it makes the mode feel bigger than it is, but they never take away that mode. Like, you can still do that stuff. They just sort of incentivize you with this sort of special event. I think they could have done that with Salmon Run, where they could have had times where Salmon Run was like you got maybe more from it, like you got like some sort of additional bonus, but always have that mode there. Yeah. It just feels like such a big part of Splatoon 2. Why not do it? But I think the progression within Salmon Run is pretty good. The way that it works is you are an employee of this corporation, and when you complete a run, if you're successful, your meter will fill up. It's sort of like an experience meter, and you'll get paid more. But then if you fail, you did a bad job, and so you'll get paid less. And so because you're trying to like get these points to get these daily bonuses, you want to do well, so you can get those bonuses faster. And it also, like, the higher up you are on the pay grade, the more difficult it's getting.
Yeah.
And so
what's crazy is it's not just that it's more difficult, which that's what I was thinking. It's like, oh, okay, they're just going to add in more whatever.
Yeah.
But it like quickly is like, okay, there's an enemy I've never seen before. Oh, the tide is changing. Oh, it's dark. Oh, it's foggy. Like, just all of these other variables that just start getting mixed in there that you aren't really expecting. That like makes the fact that there's only one map available for 12 hours actually not that big of a deal, because you never really know what to expect. Which is something that I feel is playing out better online than when we did it locally. When we were doing it locally and we're setting the difficulty level or whatever, it was odd because it felt like every time we played it was the exact same thing. Whereas when I play online, it's like, I don't know what to expect online. It's changing up every time I play.
Smart. The dualies are awesome.
They
All
are.
of the weapons.
It's a really good go-to weapon, yeah.
Yeah. And just, there's still something, I think, like Turf War. I remember when I was first reviewing Splatoon 1, I was mad that I was getting a lot of kills, but we were still losing. It was something that I couldn't wrap my head around. It was like, I haven't, when I was first encountering Splatoon, it just felt wrong to me that, like, I would individually be doing very well, but we would still be getting crushed. And now I see it, and you just have to think a different way. And I get mad, and this is a common thing people are saying online, but it's so true, where you lose by a percentage, and it's because you didn't ink your spawn. You're trying to cover as much ground as possible, and you didn't take that free territory. And like, there are so many weapons I will pick now, and it's like, I know I'm not going to get any kills with this, but it's really good on this map in this situation. Right. And like all of this stuff you can say about Splatoon 1, but I think it's credit to how inventive that initial idea was, that it's like there's nothing like this. Like this is so much fun thinking about like, oh, okay, I can use this ink to get up this wall and then shoot this guy. Like and that on top of the speed in which it happens is fantastic.
It's super unfair, but I think that learning curve is maybe why I'm not like, going hog wild with Splatoon, because I played the first game enough to realize like I'm gonna have to play this a little bit more to get really good at this, to really get that movement down to where like I would just get out of control whenever I would like drop into squid mode and slide around and just like actually like going down and hopping back up and like aiming and then making sure you have the real estate to move where you want to, that enough of the floor is covered. That's completely on me. It's not because like I don't think the game is good. It's just because like I don't know if I have the energy in me to invest in this versus another game I might want to invest in, but I played it up until that point.
It is overwhelming.
It's a lot.
I think
many systems to it, like you said, that are totally different. So it's not me just like, oh, I got to get good at fighting games. It's like I got to learn what's going on here because there's a whole. It's
Well, I felt
it's its own system.
For me, probably the hardest thing to kind of crack through is like with all the gear abilities.
Yes.
Like putting on clothes and like what the heck good does that do me and how much do I have to account for it? And really, I think you don't need to worry about it that much. It's when you start to recognize that like, oh, okay, like that would help me in this situation, then I can gravitate towards those things. So I as a beginner, I really don't think it makes a huge amount of difference in what you're doing. It's more of like as you identify your playstyle, as you know what kind of weapons you like, then you can start adapting the gear abilities to those kinds of things.
You were talking about just wanting to learn it, and I think something that I like as a returning Splatoon player in Splatoon 2 is how they've changed special weapons. Because I think a lot of the new ones are very, very, very exciting. I think, but you get them really quickly. Because you're building up this meter when you're inking territory, like when teams first encounter each other, they all have their specials ready because they've just inked their own territory and it's built up really quick. And you have like somebody on a jetpack blasting ink at you. You have somebody that's throwing clusters of bombs at you. You have rockets that are like homing in on you. You have to get out of the way.
Yeah.
And so I think as a new player, I see a lot of people not getting out of the way of rockets. I see a lot of people like getting inked by the jet people because they just don't know, and it is very powerful. But I think I like personally how much more exciting those weapons are, and it feels like more of a moment when I'm getting these things. Even something like ink armor, because it affects the whole team.
Yeah.
Because when you put it on, your whole team is taking more hits. Like all of those that stuff feels really good to do, and I think that's important.
I think one of the ones that's really great, and that's one of the things I've been learning too, is how different weapons and abilities complement the different game modes.
Yes.
And so with Rainmaker, just to kind of establish like what it is, because when I first started playing Rainmaker, I didn't play the Splatoon DLC, so I had no idea what the crap I was doing. It's like, oh, I'm just gonna grab this big gun and hold on to it. That's what I do, right? And it's like, no. So what you have to do is there's a gun in the middle of the map called the Rainmaker, and it's like a big grenade launcher that charges up and then shoots like an explosive. And there's a shield around it, and then whichever team manages to ink the shield the most, then the shield will pop, and whoever is in that splash radius is going down, and then it's open to be grabbed by either team, and you have to get that gun to a platform that it's on the other end of the map at the other team's near the other team's spawn point. Like not all the way there, but pretty close. And so what really works great in conjunction with Rainmaker is this new special called the Baller, where you're basically like a hamster in a giant beach ball.
It's really cool.
And you just roll down the map and you're creating a path. So the person with the Rainmaker can follow in your path as the baller, and then you get to the end and it explodes and splashes ink everywhere. And like just little strategies like that, to where you're not thinking about just, oh, I'm the guy with the Rainmaker, what do I do? It's like, no, I'm the guy helping the guy with the Rainmaker. Like, what's going to help out the most?
Much like Overwatch, where people sort of find heroes that they like and they just sort of stick with them, where it's like, no, based on the situation, what's going on with the enemy and like the map that we're on, it would be better if you'd be this person. That very much applies to Splatoon as well. And it's frustrating because I totally get where people are coming from. It's easy to fall in love with a weapon. Like, I love the arrow spray. It's just like a solid, I can do decent with it in all situations. But there are weapons like the Gatling gun. In order to use the Gatling gun, it's not just holding down the trigger and then it blasts away. You have to charge it up and then let go. And there are like 2 circles with which it has to charge. And it's kind of weird in a game to pull the trigger and not have it fire. And you have to let go in order for the bullets to come out. And it took me a couple of matches to get used to it, but then I started seeing like, oh no, the range on this thing is incredible. I'm killing people before they can kill me. It's really slow. It's not good at covering ink, but if I like support my people that are using brushes, I can really help them out. And that's what's been so satisfying to me and so interesting is the game is rewarding me for getting over that brief period of uncomfortableness or for finding the slot in which this weapon fills in. Like, that has been so immensely satisfying.
Yeah, I really didn't think I was going to like that gun in multiplayer because I used it in single player because I played through the single player first for the preview. And like those first couple of multiplayer matches with the Splatoon, I'm like, oh
yeah, you have
this
that moment.
Is great. Yeah. It's awful if you get caught by surprise, but if you have that person in your sights, like they don't have much of an option to get away because it just hits them so fast and so hard. And then I've gotten some that more recently we showed them on the stream, but like definitely like you see why they're for advanced players because it's like a really big roller and like a really big charger, and they cover a wide range of territory at once, but they're so slow. Like if you get in a fight with that roller versus another roller, you're going down.
Yeah.
Like you kind of have to hang back and stick to the balconies where people aren't really looking for you.
Blood, I am curious if you feel this way as well, but another thing I'm no balance expert, but a thing that I also really like in Splatoon 2 is I feel like the weaknesses for the weapons are very, very easily defined, where it's like, okay, if I pick this, I'm not good at this. And because of that, I've never run into a weapon or a loadout where I felt like it was unfair or that it was cheap or like the only reason I lost is because they were taking advantage of my weakness or I wasn't in a good position or I was just being dumb. Like I haven't had too many frustrating they need to fix that moments in Splatoon 2. Have you?
I haven't. I mean, I've seen that the sloshers can be pretty devastating. But I've also had matches where, like just people take me down because the slosher, it has limited range. So if you're far enough away, then you can definitely pick me off. It's just a matter of how well I can do at, surprising people and being in that range to use a slosher effectively. The blasters are kind of similar. It's like they're really effective at getting people without targeting precisely. But again, that range, that's a set limit that you have to try to learn to work with. The other thing that's kind of tricky is you use them more in ranked mode than anything is the beacons that you can set down. I don't know if you've unlocked these yet in any sets, but they're basically spawn points to where people can super jump to them.
What level do you get those at?
I don't remember exactly what the first set is that you get them. But that takes place of a bomb. So you don't have that reaction where you can just toss a bomb at somebody and the beacons use up like most of your ink. So it's like, okay, put down a spawn point to be able to, have people come in and tower control and stuff, but you have to be able to do it intelligently because somebody can just quickly take that out. And then you've just kind of wasted that moment, that time.
Brandon, I'm sure our explanations haven't made you feel like any less intimidated. Like it's a lot of a lot of nitty gritty stuff that we're talking about specific weapons and specials and things like that. But there is a story mode. There's a story mode where it's like, hey, you're starting out with this very basic gun. We're going through these levels where the enemies you have to work for it a little bit, but it's not overwhelming. You're not fighting humans. Is that something you'd want to go through?
I tell you what, and to me, it's not necessarily learning the systems. It's the feel of the game. It's getting really comfortable with the transitioning between those two things, popping out and shooting right away. And I tell you what, when we group streamed it, we got Splatoon 2 on our work business account and downloaded it to my Switch, so it's on there.
Yeah.
So like
Yeah.
I'll probably find myself at some point where I take my Switch out and be like, oh, okay, that's enough of Zelda for them. Oh yeah, there's Splatoon. Sure, I'll jump in. Can I make a new character? Am I stuck with the character we made in 5
You can
seconds?
change it anytime.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. The one thing I will say though is I can't imagine playing this any other way than the Pro Controller.
The Pro Controller
Yeah.
is so good.
It's so good for Splatoon.
It's
I
so good
tried-
for everything. That controller is
Yeah, it
It
fantastic.
is. It feels very nice.
But I tried doing like the split Joy-Cons, and that really wasn't working for me because I used the analog stick a lot for quick turn left
Yep.
and right. And when you're just holding a Joy-Con in your hand, it's just so hard to get to that little analog stick. And then that's not so bad doing handheld, but doing handheld, you're always fighting with the fact that you're actually moving the screen. So if there's any kind of lights that'll glare off of it or anything, it can be a little bit weird. You
So
don't
you're
have as much
using
control.
gyro.
Yeah, definitely using motion control.
Now I know everybody swears by and says that gyro is the way to go, and if you're not using gyro, you are not using Splatoon to the full. You're not being the best Splatoon player you can be. I still stick with standard analog controls, and I have given the gyro hours of time, and I still prefer the analog stick.
I tried to go. It's funny because I do play other shooters with twin analog sticks, but I
Yeah.
tried to go and play with the analog, and no, this is
Can't do
not.
it.
It's not working for me
be
in
your
this game.
camp, Ben,
Yeah, but the thing is I haven't. I feel like I'm doing well. As long as I'm doing well, it's like as long as you're
Sure.
having
fun,
Yeah, as long
that's
as
all
you're
that
having
matters.
fun,
Yeah.
right? There you go. That's the real answer. It is 2 hours and 10 minutes already. There's one more game that I want to talk about, and we've talked. Damiani did a whole review on it, but it left such an impression on me that I can't help but at least mention it, and that's Rime.
Nice.
Yeah, very surprised with his review of that. How positive
Yeah,
that
it was more positive than I expected from him. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like we're being more positive about Rime than a lot of other outlets, but Rime is one of those games where I played all the way through it and I was like, how are people not positive about this? And I have to wonder if it's just because we've had a lot of games kind of that look similar to Rime or are kind of going for a thing like Rime. But man, what does it with Rime? There are two things with Rime: the way it presents its story and the pacing of it and the areas that you're in. The story is excellent, I think, and I think the reason the story is excellent is with all these games where you have like Abzu or Journey, it's very mysterious and things are implied. But I think there's actually a lot of story present in Rime. There's more story present than other similar games that you would compare it to. But what Rime does so well is how it unfolds the mystery. Like where Rime ended up and the connection that you have with the characters you meet is not what I thought they would be initially. And it gives you enough information where as you're going through the game, you have plenty to chew on. It's not so obscure and abstract that you're sitting there going like, that's weird, I guess. Time to move on to the next area, solve the next puzzle. Like you're like, oh, I think it could be this, or maybe it's going this way, and that's really fun. And I think that's really good storytelling is when you want to put in the effort to try to figure it out as you're going along. And I think Rime does a really good job of that. The other thing that it does really well is you're never spending. I was never stuck in Rime. I was never stuck on any of the puzzles for more than a couple of minutes. And so everything that I was solving, whether I was escaping like this giant dinosaur bird or whether I was, moving light in a certain direction, I never hit a brick wall. And I don't know if I just got lucky or just maybe the puzzle spoke to me.
That's a good
But
sign, though, yeah.
Yeah, it is. It is a good sign. You of course, the natural question I think after that is it too easy? No, I like the things that you're doing in Rime. I think are very clever, and even though, like for example, shifting light around is something that appears every so often in Rime, I felt like the way in which those puzzles mutated, or like maybe they would do something that was an evolution of a thing that you encountered before, but then immediately after that you'll do something brand new, where it's like, okay, I'm leading this ball creature around, and all of that was just fantastic. It is a game that, at the end of it, with there not being words really, or like it being a very sparse game, I had a lot of emotion. Like it was it was an experience that I had to unpack, and so I felt very fortunate that I played through it, and I think other people should give it a chance. I think it's a game that has been overlooked. It also looks really, really good. Just that style and the way that it presents the sea and the way that it uses bold colors, like all the environments.
Would seem to me to be a really good purchase on Switch. If you're looking for, if you've gotten a lot of use out of that console and you're looking for a good game.
When is it coming out on Switch?
We don't have
Oh, is
a
it
firm
not
date
out
yet.
yet?
Yeah.
Then never mind. Ignore me.
Yeah, it's
Whoops.
a really cool game. That's kind of my short 4-minute explanation of it. But Brandon, since you edited the review, something that I think is cool that you tell me sometimes is like you'll sort of have a perception of a game, but you haven't had a chance to like dig in and learn about it or play it or read up about it. And the way that the reviewer talks about it, or just going through the footage trying to piece the shot together, you learn a lot about it. Did that happen with Rime?
Definitely. I think one of the sentences, I'm paraphrasing, but I think he said like it's one of like the best endings in video games or something. He made some statement. I was like,
I'm not ready to commit to that. I'm not ready to commit to that.
Where it's tough, for a game you haven't played, it's tough to, like talk to that reviewer and be like, really?
Exactly,
got to trust Damiani there. And Damiani is a man of hefty opinions and who has completed many a game similar to Rime. And so definitely has a lot to say as far as like trying to convey a story there. And like you were saying, like give you enough to think about, but not, give you too much information or just kind of bog you down with info to kind of let you pick up everything on your own and try to determine its own importance. And yeah, I think it's tough. It makes me think of something that I think Ukulele and Rime might have gotten, I don't necessarily the same like development process, but like kind of had the same kind of question marks going in where I'm like, I've heard good things, I've heard bad things. I'm just curious how the final product is. And Damiani reviewed both of those and was not impressed with Ukulele, but really liked Rime. Mm-hmm. And so I think when a game, kind of drops off my radar, or I'm not really sure when it's coming out. Like I know one of us is working on it, but I don't know if like, exactly what time of the year it is. And then all of a sudden, boom, here this review script drops and is very positive, and is, I haven't had a conversation with Damiani about this. I'm literally like all the Damiani-ness of this is just strictly coming through the text,
right?
Of me trying to like decipher like what this game means to him and why specifically he's focusing on these positive elements.
2 questions. I feel like Rime is very much a game where just seeing something for the first time is a lot of the appeal. Mm-hmm. The first time you go to that new area, or the way it transitions between scenes, or a specific story moment. And I feel like when you're putting a review together, you have to go out of your way to change up the shots to make things interesting. Do you feel like because this game is just so visually, like the visual appeal of it is such a big part of it, do you feel like it was ruined for you in a way?
No. One of the things that helps with that is the more reviews I cut, the more they kind of seem to blend together. So if I give myself 2 or 3 months from when I cut the review to when I play the game, it won't be like, was this the review? I don't remember. But it will instead it'll be like, oh yeah, I remember that shot. That's neat. And so like again, if I put a little distance there, then I can still appreciate it and not just be like, well, I know what's gonna happen when I get to the top of this hill. But then again, no more so than really like if I'm interested in a game and see a lot of trailers, like I'll still pick out those moments. Or the first half an hour of that game was not a surprise to me because it was the beach and the tall white towers and imagery I'd seen before.
Sure. Does it have the opposite effect where it's like, oh, this wasn't on my radar, but now because I am going through and putting together all this footage and reading these words, that you go and you want to play it pretty immediately?
Yeah, I think it's that it's kind of like watching a stream on Twitch for a couple hours for a game you're passionate about but don't know if you want to invest in. I think a lot of times like that'll be the make or break for me of just like, okay, this like Injustice was a good example. Like I had not played that when I was cutting Huber's review and like saw the cutscenes and saw how deep, how well all these characters were animated and represented in the game and how extensive that's what was. And I was like, I'm gonna buy this. So yeah,
cool.
It happens.
Blood, I pose this to you because I feel like you play games differently than me in very key ways. And something I don't like in Rime is there are several different collectibles, and I was going along, I was getting collectibles, and I was like, this just sort of feels like a chore. Like, I don't think these are cleverly placed enough that I'm enjoying going out of my way and finding them. And so it just sort of feels like a task that I'm doing, and so I just dropped it. But whereas I feel like you are more of a completionist, you will hold on to those things a little bit longer. When you go out of your way for collectibles, do you think it's just sort of a compulsive thing that you do, or does it stem out of, I just like this world so much?
I mean, definitely a little bit of both. I think, in general, I guess I kind of have to see what the collectible is about, or like what it takes to get there. Because sometimes getting collectible really isn't about the collectible at all. It's like, this is a difficult thing. It's placed in a weird way. Like, I want to figure out how to get to that.
Yeah.
Just to experience that part of the world and whatever that puzzle is, to do it. So sometimes that, like what the collectible is doesn't even necessarily matter. It's like, I just want to figure out, where's it hidden? How is it hidden? And like Splatoon 2, those collectibles aren't that hard, but like when I miss one, it's like, okay, where the heck did you put it? Where is it? Where's that thing hiding? So
yeah, for me, I'm very much about the reward, where you can convince me to do almost anything if I think it's going to make the game better in the long run. And like in Splatoon 2, in the single player, you can go and you can get those tickets that give you more experience or give you more money. And it's like, oh, I'm leveling really slow. I want that. I'm going to go out of my way to go and find that, make sure I get it, or upgrade my equipment or something like that. Do you care a lot about the reward? And follow-up question, how deep into the Korok seeds did you get in Breath of the Wild?
Yeah, I mean, I think it just really depends. Like, I think games like Assassin's Creed where they have these hundreds of animus shards all over Black Flag, and I was all right, I'm gonna collect all these and all this. I don't know if you remember, we edited this video, and I was like, I'm gonna collect all these and we're gonna see what we get, and there were cool rewards for some of the game's collectibles. But then I got all these animus shards, and I was just waiting for maybe like some snippet of story or something to unlock. It's like, what are these things? What is their purpose? And it was literally just like a checkbox on a longer list of random things to do. And it was just like, a checkbox? That's it. I got a checkbox. It's like, okay, no, I don't. Whereas...
Let it go.
Yeah. And it's just because there's so many of them. Whereas like Splatoon 2, it's okay, like there's one of these and one of these in each stage, and they're hidden, often in clever places. So, just finding them, just like realizing like, okay, if I go a little bit up the wall rather than hitting the jump point, I'll get one of these things that's hidden in a level. With the Korok seeds, I've gotten quite a lot of them, but I'm not really getting them to get them necessarily. Again, it's just like those kind of those little micro puzzles. I
never went
enjoy the
searching for
process
them.
of solving them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I never went into an area being
Yeah.
like, Korok time. Like, it was just like, oh no, I'm going there for another reason. And, oh look, like I just found one.
Right. Well, that's one of the best things about Breath of the Wild is I wouldn't do, like you were saying, I wouldn't do something for a Korok seed. I would just do something because it's like, there's something suspicious about this area.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm going to get. Oh, it just happened to be a Korok seed.
Right.
Go for the area, stay for the seeds.
Yeah. I was going to talk about the Destiny 2 beta because I think people have a lot of opinions on it. I have a lot of opinions on it. But where I am at with Destiny 2, and I know you guys have played it a little bit, I kind of wish Huber was here because I think maybe we could go a little bit deeper with it. I'm just not sure how to feel about Destiny 2 yet. I think that maybe sounds more negative than I actually feel. I am cautiously optimistic, but the Destiny 2 beta I don't think gave me enough for me to decide if the changes that they're making are good. And on top of that, they've already come out and said, like, hey, this is an older build. We're going to fix a lot of this stuff. Because with Destiny 2, the things that I like are some of my biggest criticisms with Destiny 1, like that story mission that you do where the tower is being attacked.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, wow, there's a lot going on. All of this looks really cool. These characters are doing pretty incredible things. I feel like I'm part of a special, like, hectic, action-y moment, and a lot of story missions in Destiny 1 didn't feel like that. They just sort of felt by the numbers, and so I'm like, oh man, if the story is like this in Destiny 2, that's going to be a huge improvement. That's awesome. I did the Strike, really liked the Strike. The Strike felt like they took some of the cool elements from the raids and put them in the Strike. It felt really big and expansive. You keep going down. You're doing a lot of jumping. The boss has interesting mechanics.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I played through it pretty much like right when it was like live. We were having to like ping that thing. It's like, was it working yet? Is it working yet?
Yeah.
And yeah, me and Ian just did the strike together with one random, and just that I think is where I would probably put some time into Destiny 2. Although I'm not the kind of person that would do stuff like strikes over and over again.
Sure.
And so that's why I don't feel like I have that much to say about the beta, because like, okay, me and Ian played the strike, and I played one multiplayer match with Huber, and I was like, okay, I gotta get back to the other stuff I'm doing.
Right.
But it was great just having that moment with this, me and Ian to like, all right, I'm gonna put a healing circle down now, come over here, and and just kind of that cooperation, that coordination with friends, like to me that's just got to be the way to play that game. It's just like if you can get a crew together to play with you, like that's the best way to do it.
Yeah, absolutely, and I agree. Like, because these characters aren't persistent because they're not beta characters. Like I too just did the strike once. It's like there's no real reason for me to do this again. And I think the true mark of a strike is if you want to do it repeatedly. And I just don't know yet. And I also just don't know about how they've changed weapons. Mm-hmm. So in Destiny 1, you had a primary, a secondary, and a special weapon, and they've taken some of those weapons, like the sniper and the shotgun are now essentially power weapons. So you need power ammo to use them. And using a sniper in Destiny feels awesome. I loved like switching between my primary and a sniper and just getting a lot of shots off. But now, like, ammo isn't readily available, so I'm not using a sniper very often. I don't know how I feel about that, but they've come out and said, no, we're going to fix that problem. And cooldowns are a lot longer for a lot of your abilities. And in PvP, that makes sense. One of the reasons I did not stick with Destiny 1 PvP is it was just chaos all the time. Like, everybody doing specials, and like it was just a mess. And I think some people liked that. I think some people liked the chaos. But now it's, 4v4, it's a little bit more intense. You can't spam that stuff as much. But I'm not having fun in the multiplayer. Like, for as much as Destiny 1 multiplayer made me angry, and again, I'm coming from a completely casual perspective. I'm sure people that lived and breathed it have a different perspective than I do. But, like, even though I would get angry at the mess of Destiny 1, it felt distinct. Whereas in Destiny 2, I think, even though that chaos made me angry, by taking it away, it feels a little bit more generic, I guess. Like, I don't know why I would play Destiny over some other multiplayer shooters. It's just not as much fun, but I haven't put enough time into it to really dig into, well, why isn't this fun? And so with Destiny 2, I feel like you have to sort of like take a wait and see approach. Whereas like this isn't a sequel that is, it's still Destiny. You're still doing the same things. You're still doing strikes. You're still going on these quests. There's still the Crucible. It's not a dramatically different game in that sense, but like, how are these smaller changes going to impact the whole thing? Like, yeah. I don't know.
One thing I will say that I didn't care for in both the story mission and the strike, random spinning machinery to avoid.
Yeah. Like,
that didn't really feel like I'm trying to shoot enemies and then giant drill, dead. I'm like, great, okay.
It's an equalizer. Weeds out people that are talking on the phone and playing Destiny at the same time.
Yeah, I kind of like that part.
I did kind of like that part too. Actually.
I mean, I could
see it being annoying, but
yeah, I could see it being.
It was annoying trying to revive people. Like, what happened to them? Like,
yeah. If you got someone on your team that was not paying attention and not, then that's bad. But
then aren't you kind of like incentivized to get on that mic and talk to them and
right?
say like,
I think that's what they want. Yeah, right. I think that's the whole point of that, and maybe making that strike the first one.
Yeah.
Because that you will not see that coming right away. It's like, what's that thing spinning?
Brandon, you weren't as big into it as some of the other allies, but you were a fan of Destiny 1. You played.
I reviewed Destiny 1. Yeah.
Yeah, you reviewed. I forgot.
Yeah,
that you reviewed
and
Destiny 1.
I definitely enjoyed it out of the gate, and it was not. If I chose different life choices as far as my career was concerned, I probably would have invested something. I think about games like Destiny and Grand Theft Auto Online and other games I probably would have spent way more time in than I currently do.
Yeah.
Just because I feel the need to move on to other experiences and communicate them, because of our jobs.
Sure.
But I almost get the feeling that Destiny betas aren't for the players. that they're like pretty much for Bungie to just kind of make sure everything works. And I think when Bungie gets feedback of like more of this again, they just ignore it because they know there's more to it. They know there's more content that they have yet to deliver. They've said like way more cutscenes, way deeper story. We know there's only one raid, but we've only just done one strike, and so they can kind of see how expansive the game is. And so those type of criticisms that are just like, is there more than this? I don't know. I think those are kind of falling deaf ears, and they really just focus on like technically what doesn't work. You saying you can't get more sniper ammo, got it. Like that's the stuff they're really concerned about.
Yeah.
So going in and determining whether the Destiny 2 beta is indicative of the game Destiny 2 is tough, I think.
It is
for what they put out there.
It is tough, and it's why I'm hesitant to be definitive at all or really dig into it too much. But people are forming impressions. People are saying, "Oh, this is not what I want Destiny 2 to be," based on this beta and based on the changes that they make. So I have to wonder if you're Bungie, does that early impression, how much does that matter? If you are, like you said, that a lot of these problems are going to be addressed, how much do you care about that early perception? How much does that perception generally matter?
Yeah. What
do you think?
I think it has a lot to do with how much time you're willing to give to Destiny and that amount of time that you knew before you even started the beta.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a lot of convincing going on where people are like, I'm on the fence. I don't know if I'm going to add this to my life, and then really got into the Destiny 2 beta, and that did it for you. I don't see that happening as much as potentially other shooters. Or even like new IPs, something like an Overwatch that you would get into and be like, this looks cool, but I just have no idea. Like, I think with Destiny, like, I think you can make a pretty safe prediction on whether it's going to be worth it to get back into it, whether you're still playing Destiny 1 now or whether you took some time off.
Blood, did your limited time with the beta make you any more or less interested?
Like I said, probably more interested if, like those opportunities are there to play with someone I know.
Yeah, let's make it happen.
I don't know, like in the grand scheme of things, it will probably like very much vary based on what else is coming out at that same time. It's like, it's not at the top of my list necessarily.
Okay. Well, it's that time of the show. That very special time. We've done very abrupt chops the last couple of episodes, but I've been on vacation, and I need a good old-fashioned, built-up, feel it from your gut. Up and down shot there. For the HOTTAKE today, if you're new to the show, something that I need to be better at is, I realize that some people are listening for the first time and they have no idea what HOTTAKE means. And that's fair. What HOTTAKE means is, this is where I sit and think for longer than I probably should about a topic concerning games. And it's a question, I think it's interesting HOTTAKE if it's a question that I can't immediately answer, or where I don't have an immediate opinion, or where I go back and forth. And this one, I felt that way. About this one. And my question to you is, do we cut games too much of a slack when it comes to certain things? Are we too generous? Are we too, because we are people that cover games, because we are people that have played games for a long time, when we say a story is good in a game, Sophie's really into this HOTTAKE. When we say like a story is good in a game, and we say, oh, this game has great storytelling, this game has great characters, are we able to distinguish between truly great, like great under any lens, or just great for a game or great for this genre? Are our expectations too low? Do we not challenge what we're seeing enough? And the same could be true with mechanics. I think a lot of times, we just do something in a game where it's like, okay, I have to go and I have to deposit this thing here because that's what you do in games. Like, you have to run through these hoops. You have to do this busy work. And if we're too generous, how do we get that perspective? Is there anything like truly great, like, can you distinguish it between games and movies and books, or is a good story no matter what?
You want to take this first, Blood? I have opinions.
I don't think I did a great job of. It's kind of a broad HOTTAKE, but
right.
I'm not sure if I have the answer you want, but I definitely have an answer.
Yeah, we can suss it out as we go along.
I mean, I think I kind of see where you're coming, because I think in a way it's sort of like, it's similar to how you think of, say blockbuster movies or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
it's like you can walk out of something like Guardians of the Galaxy and like think that was great, that was really well done. And it's like I loved it was amazing, but at the same time, like you're not comparing that to like some movie that's like gonna make you rethink how you treat other people.
Right.
You're like it's like it's not that heavy of a thing. And so yeah, it is weird because there are different levels of like how something like a Mass Effect is going to impact you versus how something like Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons is going to impact you. It's like they can both be great, but they're great in very different dimensions.
Yeah. Talking about how things impact you, there are a lot of movies that I see, and even TV shows now. I mean, TV is great now, where I will watch something, and it will impact me so much that like there are shows that I've watched where I've seen an episode and I can't watch any more TV for the rest of the week. Like it's just it's been so impactful to me. Whereas with games, I rarely feel like the whole experience is that powerful. Like I played through Beyond Two Souls recently, and there are really good specific moments where it was like, okay, this scene here was really well done. This was inventive. This is a cool way to experience that. But the story as a whole didn't do much for me. And I even feel that way about Mass Effect. Like I think the broader story is fine. It's acceptable.
Right.
But what I remember about Mass Effect are those character interactions, those like specific moments like, oh, when I was here on this planet, not necessarily the whole cloth thing. Is that a weakness with games? Is that okay? Is it just a different thing? Like, at what point are we being too generous and at what point are we just being nitpicky?
I think so. For me, from the perspective of a reviewer, is I'm telling you based on my expectations of a thing,
right?
How that ended up turning out. Based on like how people could have perceived something. Obviously you want to try to help someone understand a topic, so you don't want to come in. One interesting bit of feedback I've heard from people is that we take that for granted a lot in our reviews. We throw out terms like FPS and stuff like that, and it's just like you kind of got to know what that stands for. When we say like HUD, like what that means.
Right.
But I think when you review something, you're basing it on what you were expecting something to be and what you think the standard of quality based on what something is. And whether your scoring system can be ironclad, still your perception of what that is can change depending on what you think, like, is it a good shooter? It's like, well, what is a good shooter to you? Like, what does that mean? Like how, I think one game that I got a lot of flack for and that I've wrestled with was I gave Battlefront 8. And a lot of people gave Battlefront a 6. They got really, really pissed. And to me, I was born in the 70s. I grew up with Star Wars as a small child. I grew up with toys flying around. And making the Falcon sound, making TIE fighter noises, making blaster sounds and lightsaber sounds. And so when I hear a TIE fighter sound perfect, it's going to hit me a little bit more. It's going to impact me. It's going to be worth more for me when I'm adding up all of the qualities of a game. And so for some people that are just like, well, I don't really care about Star Wars. It's like, well, I do. And right there, we're different people. And so I don't think that there is, if you find yourself, maybe I did score that a little higher than I should. Maybe I am letting my bias or my interest in that genre in general kind of like take over. I think it's okay because there are thousands of other reviewers out there that have many, many other perspectives, and your perspective can kind of blend with theirs to maybe try to find some kind of collective understanding of what something is or how it's been perceived by the industry.
Right. But you brought up a very interesting point there that I want to hang on is like, part of what made Battlefront work is not that it was telling a story like Star Wars, but that you could feel swinging around a lightsaber, shooting a blaster, or like just having the sights and sounds surround you and move through that world.
And that wasn't an accident. That was work that they did, and it was the debate amongst reviewers whether that work done on making sure it looked realistic and felt realistic and sounded realistic was worth it. Or whether you would have not minded if the game didn't look as good, but there was more of a campaign, more maps, more environments.
Yeah. There's so many weird layers to it because, like, you just replayed Final Fantasy VI. Mm-hmm. There's a game that I would say has a fantastic, great story.
Yes.
but I don't think I would ever at any point say that it has good writing.
Yeah, the dialogue's not
Yes.
great.
Yeah, it's weird. Like what? Well, why do I like this story so much if I can look at any of those lines and think, well, that's kind of silly or that's kind of weird. It's like you get attached to these little sprites bouncing around and none of it's aside from the music, none of it's really presented that well. And even the music from a quote unquote objective perspective, it's like, well, it's just. It's all just a bunch of electronic sounds trying to sound like other things, but it all works. It's all very effective. Like even like you were pointing out some of those airship sprites at the very end of the game. It's like those only exist for the ending, and they look amazing. Not only for the time, but just even now looking at that, on the technology and everything.
There are people that I see that every so often say like an RPG has to have a great story in order to be worthwhile or to really be a legendary RPG. And the more that I think about it, the more I don't think that is true.
Necessarily, yeah.
Yeah, because like I think we have a tendency as human beings, like we want to process things as simply as possible. And when you break down a game, the easiest way to do it is be like, okay, well, here's the story, here's the graphics, here's like control, but all of those things are working together simultaneously in a game. I mean, when you go out into a big open world in a game, like take anyone you want, like take The Witcher for example, it's like think about how complex that single moment is. Like think about how the grass is moving, how the trees are swaying in the wind, how these characters are animating and moving, what their routine is, where they're going to go, like how your HUD is presented to you and the information that it's conveying, how your character looks, like how sound is playing, like all of that stuff. And then like you get to move through it on top of that. Like you get to influence what happens next. All of that stuff I think is responsible for a powerful scene. It's not just oh, he said that line good. You can't hold it to the same standard because it's an entirely different thing.
Yeah, well, even something as simple as, like how people react to you. It's like there's people interacting in the scene doing their daily tasks, but then Geralt walks through that street and some people are going to respect him, some people are going to like toss insults at him. It's like there's going to be all of this other things, like a kid's gonna, look at his swords and is like, I want to play with swords, and others are gonna run away. It's all of these like very different things like play into that, and then the lighting is gonna play into that. The sound of the wind and the birds and whatever area you're in is gonna play into that. The fact that you have, all of this debris and stuff from some battle like paints a very different mood. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of crazy how much all works out there. Even the fact that like I still think it's crazy that the amount of sunlight varies based on how far north you are on the map. Mm-hmm. It's these simple things of like, there's world building, but then there's also character building, and then there's also plot, and it's kind of hard to like put it all together. And individual quest lines that like, okay, well, this quest line is really good on its own, but if you take into the fact that, like, if you do two of these quest lines and they seem too similar, then that sort of takes away from things. Mm-hmm. Whereas if I'd only played one of them, I would have had a different perspective of that game. Yeah.
Right. We're talking about all these different components, though, and how these are more complex than just the words being said and how it's written. But, like, take any game that is trying to present a story, and you immediately go like, oh, the story's not good in this, but there's so much other stuff. But it is trying to have a story, right? There are characters that are talking to you. None of it matters. Like, think about it. There's so many games that I've played, so many, where I have reached the end, and I cannot give you a good summation of that story. Right. And I think that's true. I probably think that's true for all of us. Like, not to pick on it, but like I played all of Tales of Hysteria. I played the thing front to back, and I was paying attention, and right after I reviewed it, I could comment on the characters in the world and the story. Almost none of it is stuck. I can't, like, the different, like, there are, like, celestial beings and how people interact with them. I don't even remember how all of that stuff works. Part of that could be attributed to me having a bad memory, but I think another thing about it is it just wasn't that good. Like, it was serviceable in the moment, but wasn't presented strong enough to really stick with me. Like, am I giving that too much of a pass? When I play through so many first-person shooters and all I tell you about is how the guns feel, not how the world is presented, like, are things going to get better if we don't push harder against these things? Or do we need to push harder at all?
I think just guaranteed there's going to be someone that will. There's somebody out there will, and the publisher will not ignore that statement. That'll stick with them. Like somebody, no matter what game it is, someone's going to review it, give it a nasty review, even if it's constructive, and but just kind of aggressively so. And I think when you talk about experiences that you have like that, I think all of us have like this, even as reviewers, and even though you don't want to listen to that voice, we all have that ticking clock where there's only so many, games I can play that do this trope, and then it's the 50th one, and I can't. I'm tired of this, and like maybe maybe you take it out on that game a little bit more than you would another game, just because it's like that was just it. It was the straw that broke the camel's back.
Well, that's the funny thing too is like people that watch a lot of One Outlet's reviews or whatever, they talk about being inconsistent. It's like, well, you dig this game for that, but this other game did the same thing, and it's like, well, for whatever reason, it didn't bother me in that game. And that could be some other weird part of the design to where, like, that actually worked in that game's favor and it didn't work in this game's favor, and that can be said for a story as well. It's like, you can have a game, just even talking about, like, length of cutscenes, like you can have a game have really long cutscenes and work, and you have another one is like you stop the action at all and, like, what are we doing right now? Like, just let me play,
I think for me, how a game presents even its text is so important. Like, think about when you're playing a game that is just a box. It's just a gray box and it has words in it, and you're going through. There are a lot of times where, especially if it's a lot of words in that box, I have to think like, oh wait, did I push X? Did I really read? Did I really comprehend what was going on? That's so much different than, and this is something that we get arguments with you about, where you have characters interacting, their mouths are moving,
right,
the scene is changing, the camera is changing. That's immediately more engaging. But of course, like, budget is a factor in that. Time is a factor in that. The type of game it is a factor in that. The amount of information that's conveying is a factor in that. And so I think it gets hard to, like, games are so diverse that, like, I don't know, like, people say stories in games need to be better. Mm-hmm. Like, they're just childish. They're not enough. And it's like, you can't just make them better. There's no universal rule that you can apply to make all of them better, because they're all trying to accomplish different things. So what does that even mean? Like, is that even really a problem?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that it's the Eileen the Crow keeps coming up, and
right.
it always makes me wonder. It's like, I walked right by that character. That character was not placed in any significance for me, and I didn't find the character significant.
Right.
I don't think I'm wrong, but it's interesting. It's like that impacted you much more, but like you kind of had the precedent of playing the games before that to know kind of how to suss out who was cool and who wasn't, like the way that From Software presents them in their world. But at the same time, I can't be super critical, because here was this cool thing that I missed purely because my fault, that I didn't know, to maybe find that other character or listen to their words a little more carefully, as opposed to other people that were presented the same way they were but didn't end up being that important to the story. So yeah, it works both ways. Like, for me, it's a bummer that I didn't do it, but at the same time, it's kind of fun that there was something deeper to find there. And if you discovered it on your own, it's that much more impactful.
Yeah, I do think there is this security blanket, though, where, like, a lot of times I'll play a game and I'll be like, oh, okay, like, I've seen a game. It's okay that the game is presenting itself this way because I've seen it so many times before, where that's just par for the course. And I think in some ways it's good because it allows us to move on and see other parts of that game that might be more substantial. But when I take a step back, I think to myself, am I too comfortable? Mm-hmm. Like, is it okay? Like, again, talking about Eileen the Crow, and you were saying that, like, it bothered you that you're seeing these characters in Bloodborne where their mouths aren't moving, but you're having these conversations with them. Like, I could get past that because I've been used to it. I've seen other games like that. Sure. Is that me being too comfortable? Are we getting too comfortable? Do we excuse things?
Am I too comfortable in the world of cutscenes and lip movement?
Right.
And so it's, I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. There's no correct
Right.
answer. There's no correct score to any game.
Yeah.
We just kind of like see where we are at the end of the day, based on that limited window of attention that a game gets at launch, to kind of figure out collectively where we all arrived. And maybe based on, personalities you like and reviewers you like, who you're more likely to trust based on. Now, again, not because like they're right or wrong, but because they tend to more side with things that I like.
Yeah. But you said you were reviewing Battlefront.
Yeah.
That you're like, I'm okay with feeling this way because there are a bunch of other people who are focusing on totally different things that they're going to love that I didn't notice, or things that they're going to hate that I didn't notice. Different perspectives, and that's true. The internet has an abundance of critical voices. But for the consumer, you only have so much time to watch a review or to read a review. I mean, that's a commitment. And there are a lot of people who trust us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who devote their time to us and choose us. And I want to give them as many perspectives as possible. That's why we have things like Frame Trap. That's why we have things like streams. And so, like, if you trust Huber more than anyone else, you can focus on Huber. But back in the day, something that people still bug us about are Electronic Gaming Monthly reviews, where they had 3 different reviewers and 3 different perspectives. Why don't we do that?
Because we're not magazines with 2 months early access to an unfinished game.
Maybe that. Also, just diversification. I think with 9 of us pursuing different interests, we still only play 30% of this industry's output.
Yeah.
Again, 12 to 15 games I have sitting with nobody actually playing them right now. Yeah.
I mean, even things like Diablo or like No Man's Sky or something that we could just so easily move on. Every now and then, one of us is still entrenched, is still like, I can't put this game down. I'm still into it. And so I like having that perspective on stuff, and I like that coming organically rather than like telling a person like, no, the 3 of you are working on this. But it is an interesting system, and AGM was my mag. I mean, I definitely appreciated that growing up. But at the same time, I don't know if that ever really informed any purchasing decisions I would make. I don't know if anybody's like, if it was like 8.5, 8.0, 6, and like, what? Like, I didn't read that 6 being like, we're gonna get to the truth here. I just liked seeing opposing ends. I liked seeing somebody disagreeing with somebody, and then maybe them changing their own opinions or seeing them evolve.
I'm also curious what the workload looked like for them.
Right.
Back it's like a very different thing now that like so many games, like digital games and early access games, it's just like anyone can just like shoot a code out to you in an afternoon whether you ask for it or not. And back then, like, builds had to be mailed to them, and how many did they have at a time to work on?
Right.
It's a very different world back then.
But I've been with game trailers in some capacity since 2011.
Mm-hmm.
We've pretty much, since that time, 6 years ago, done reviews in the exact same way. Mm-hmm. People like it. That's why we do it. There's a reason behind it. But I came into this HOTTAKE asking you guys, are we too comfortable? Are we too comfortable with the way that we look at games when we're reviewing them? Like, our process has been the same for years. Like, the way that we capture footage, the way that we take notes, the way that I give you information and then you read the script and all that stuff. Should we be...
The way we take notes has definitely changed pretty dramatically.
That's true.
They didn't used
That's
to...
true.
Yeah, we didn't used to do all that specific note-taking. You used to be like the editor, just try to find the thing that we talked about. Yeah.
That's a good point.
And here's a 2-hour tape. Good luck.
Right.
But I guess the ultimate question still stands is, do we need to challenge ourselves more? Do we need to be more experimental or not?
From me and somebody who's gotten better at different things in production, the more that I do them year after year after year, I do like being committed to a particular style to see if I can get better at that.
Sure.
And I think as somebody who has written these reviews and voiced them and edited them and done so many different parts of the production, I enjoy getting better at those things. I think I still am. And so I don't feel like I'm in a rut yet.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely prefer what we're doing now to the category breakdowns that we used to do. It's definitely, as we're talking about, like, all of these different factors influence each other and play off of each other, and so it's very difficult to break down, just to say, like, well, the graphics are this thing and the story is that other thing, and then somehow all together it adds up to this number that nobody understands how we did the math. It's just so much.
Yes.
And
memories.
Yeah, and it's like, it's not just the scores of that, it's the whole, it's like, well, I want to talk about this thing, but I'm in the wrong section, so I got to wait and talk about it later. And it's just so it is nicer to just, it's like yes, we sort of have, or sort of doing it in the same sort of way, but at the same time, like, every script can be extremely different. Like, we can monkey that stuff all around. We don't have to talk about things in a specific order. It's like okay, if talking about the story means that there's also collectibles that tie into the story that I want to talk about, then let's talk about those collectibles right now rather than waiting till I get to some other part where we talk about collectibles. Yeah.
One of the things that I like about our modern era is when I'm playing a game, I'll have my perspective on it, I'll write a script, and then I will go through the comments and people will tell me things about the game or just give me another angle that I never would have imagined. Like, it's so easy to get hundreds and thousands of voices all dissecting this game in different ways, and that's really valuable. But at the same time, I also have to wonder if there's a danger in that as well, where because we're exposed to so many different perspectives, we're losing a lot of the substance. I think that's why things like Metacritic have, been so successful, or why we have to use very simple notation, is because there's so much out there that it's hard for us to process anything other than, is this good, is this bad? Do you think the amount of voices is dangerous, or do you think that's just on the individual to decide how they approach a game?
I think it's on the individual. I don't think necessarily the amount of voices affects me more than like just one particular person that I feel like a kinship with.
Right.
If this is a totally randomly related thing, but like Rick and Robo in our community is a big Disneyland fan. So if like I'm chatting with him and I'm like, oh yeah, Mission Breakout just came out of California Adventure, and he's like, I didn't like it, I'd be like, oh no, Whereas if like people like didn't know necessarily, or for a lot of people were kind of like saying bad things about it, and then that was kind of in line with kind of what I heard in general, like maybe those voices individually aren't really going to stand out. But if it's somebody that like I have a frame of reference and I know like, oh dear, you and I are usually so eye to eye, or I kind of know what you mean by just that one sentence statement, then I tend to read into that more and more. But I kind of welcome those challenges. I love when it's kind of why I like trailers so much, is I love where I'm like, oh, you just played with my emotions there. I see what you did. And so I like, pat myself in the back where I'm like, okay, commercial or trailer or good review from reviewer I trust. I still don't like this game, but thanks. I appreciate your perspective.
Blood, are there too many voices? Do you think we put too much stock in the collective opinion?
I think it's really easy for people to jump on a bandwagon to say something is just awful. Like,
what do you mean by that?
I think like a good example is Mass Effect Andromeda.
Yeah.
For like the narrative of that game is that's a bad game, and they dropped the ball. And I played through that game. I enjoyed that game. It's not at the level of the previous Mass Effect games, but I think a Mass Effect fan can get into that and enjoy it, and and get attached to some of those characters and some of that world. And people have a right to be disappointed that some of the things it was alluding to may never actually, some of those questions may never be answered. So I think that's like, it's more than anything, it seems to be like really easy for people to wipe something aside and say like, oh, well, this has such and such problems. How could you ever accept that? I'm not going to play it. Blah, 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 blah. It's horrible. How could you even possibly give it the time of day? But, otherwise, I think, like lots of different perspectives, pretty good. It's interesting to hear about, the person that thinks that something, is a really great, impressive game when you're not quite seeing it.
Mm-hmm.
It is particularly interesting to find the voices that appreciate a game even though they don't think it's all that great. Like they can recognize the defects and yet still like really be into something. So.
In a general sense, and this is an unfair question, if there was one minor thing that you could see kind of across the board with video games, and I know I just said they're all different, trying to accomplish different things, what is one thing that you would like to see more of in games, or some games?
Openness when appropriate. Like just open worlds I think are fun. I like seeing franchises experiment with that. I think Zelda was obviously a big case of that this year. Yeah, it's a trend I wouldn't mind. I don't want it to take over. I don't think everybody should do it. I think like Telltale series need to be open world. Like obviously, or like the adventure games. Like I think there's some that fit side-scrolling action game like would fit a more linear design. But I always my ears perk up, and I'm always excited to see people experiment with that. Metal Gear 5, it's a great example of just kind of like opening things up a little bit more.
Maybe like eye contact. Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of the things that there's still parts of Witcher 3 that like are like seared into my mind because people just communicated through eye contact, through facial expression and things like that. And I think there's still a long way to go with the majority of games to have those subtleties in relationships to where that can come across and work and have those different tones to a relationship.
I like that answer a lot. For me, comedy, I think.
Sure, yeah.
Where there are games that are funny. There are games where I appreciate their wit and humor. But I almost like there are a lot of times in my life where it's like I just want to watch something lighthearted and fun, and I'll turn on a television show or I'll pull up a movie. I never go to games explicitly for the humor. There's no game that I can think of and I'm like, I just want this because like the jokes are good. Like maybe it's funny because of how it moves and like weird physics or things like that, but not just like, no, this line makes me laugh.
I can think of one.
I mean, I can think there are some. Yeah. There are some. I don't want to say it doesn't exist in games. Yeah. It does. It's just a rarity. And I feel like anytime it happens, like we have to, because it's so rare, we have to do it a lot. And I think specifically what I mean is more comedy about life, like more like finding humor in the world around us. I want to see more of that.
Because there's a lot of kind of self-referential things and like playing in jokes on franchises and things like that. But yeah, I see what you're saying. That like they're not really all that applicable. Like if you took that game that's really funny, like a Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga,
right?
And you like put that up to somebody that doesn't play video games, you'd be like, what? Like they wouldn't get the jokes at all.
Right. Like just a very easy example. A lot of people praise Portal for its humor and its writing, and you think about the story and the setting of Portal. It's extremely elaborate. Like it's like, okay, you're in this laboratory. Here's this crazy machine life form that's saying all these things to you. I want to like scale. Like think about It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. That is essentially about just a group of really funny assholes living day-to-day life and getting into like extraordinary circumstances. I want to see more of that. Like I think we could do it. I think we have the ability to write those characters, and I think it'd be really cool.
I still think a game like Katamari Damacy is hilarious.
It is hilarious.
Not necessarily because of jokes,
right?
It's like if I like am going by the beach and I like pick up a lady in a bikini that's like it's like, is that a joke? I guess I'm laughing,
right?
But it's just kind of the absurdity of the whole thing.
Yeah,
but, we could use a little more of that.
Yeah, it's tough because when I think of the humor in games, I think of something like a Katamari where it's very physical, and physical comedy is great, but I also just want the lines, man. It's a thing that I'm not articulating particularly well, but
there's not a lot of examples.
There's not a lot of examples
of that specifically.
We're ready for the final section of this podcast.
Yeah. Well, I mean, sounds like Ben's ready. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Are you ready?
Oh yeah.
We're 3 hours in. We have to be ready.
Yeah.
We have to pull the switch. Our first email comes in from Gonzalo. He says, "Hey allies, I recently finished Tales of Berseria and really liked the story. Still, I was disappointed by the level design, with environments feeling very dull and drawn out. I don't think I would have pushed through the repetitive way of progression of this game if I hadn't been as invested in the story. I really hope this gets the full anime treatment like Tales of Zestiria," which there's an anime on that game. Oh. Question: have you had a game that you felt like could have been more suited to another medium? A movie, a series, a cartoon, an anime, even a book or visual novel? Thanks, love and respect.
Oh, so it doesn't necessarily have to be a game. Like I read a book
Yeah,
and
so
was like, yeah, this might be a good movie.
anything that you were experiencing and you wished it could have been to another thing. He does specifically say game. But
A
I
game,
think
a game that would have been better to not be a game.
Yeah.
I've always thought Dan Brown wrote like screenplays in book form. Like he wrote Da Vinci Code and all that stuff. Like every time I read one of those books, it's like I wonder if this is going to be a movie. It just seems like packaged for that.
They were movies. They did become movies.
Eventually, yeah. But it just even at the when I first read Da Vinci Code, I was like, he clearly wants this to be a film. But a game, I don't know. I defer to you, Blood, until I can think of something.
Oh gosh.
Game that went to exist in another medium. I mean, I've desired that. Like there are gaming for I've always wanted a Grand Theft Auto movie, even though the Hauser brothers never.
Yeah.
Like I've always thought that would be kind of fun to translate any of those games into that medium. But I don't think it would improve it. I didn't play the Grand Theft Auto games being like, this isn't working for me, but as a movie it would. It's just like I think it's possible. I think you could do it.
Yeah.
But never to improve it. I don't know.
There's a game that I think of, Catherine. And I need to be very careful with how to describe it because I feel a very particular way. It's not that I would have it rather be something like a different medium. It's that like there's this puzzle game in it, and it's good. I like the puzzle part of it, and they do use that in the storytelling. But I was most interested in making the choices with these characters. Like anytime I was doing the puzzle stuff, it's not that I wasn't having a good time. It's just I liked the other things so much better that I almost wanted to like divide the two things completely. And there's another game that's on the tip of my tongue that I can't think of where it's like I'm only doing this puzzle solving part to get to the story. I think sometimes that happens with like adventure visual novels where it's like the vast majority of the time, 80% of the time you're reading text and that's all well and good. And then once in a while you have to solve a puzzle and it's like, I kind of just wish I could get the whole story. But.
Yeah. Well, I think, I honestly think that the Professor Laytons kind of have that weird divide where it's these puzzles are cool and they're great brain teasers, but the story I kind of just want to experience separately in a way.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm playing the Layton game that just came out on phone.
Right.
Where you're playing as the woman and the puzzles just. I mean, this is true of every Layton game. The puzzles just come out of nowhere, and that's a fun part of that game. But it does feel so disconnected from the story that I completely agree with you. Any other examples?
I just think games are so cool, and I think games are doing so many more interesting things and growing so much faster than television and film, and comic books and novels and any other kind of like storytelling medium. So I think it would have to be a really misguided concept or a really broken game for me to want to go backwards in time. Me to think that these interactive choices that these people are making in their storytelling just give it all up and just write a 2-hour thing and be done with it.
Sure.
I don't know if I've ever thought that. I've always been like, no, let's try to fix this. Let's try it. This story could work in a game, but I'd rather apply new ideas to this game than take all the ideas out and just go back to an old format. I think I found myself much more the opposite, where I'm just I'll watch Big Trouble in Little China and it's like, why isn't this a video game?
Yeah.
Or some comic book like Invincible. It's like, oh, this would be the best open world game, But the opposite direction, not so much.
Okay. Our next email comes in from Brandon. He says, hello, everyone. I hope this finds you well. Recently, it has decided that Doom will have all of its DLC go free with their recent 6.66 update. And because of this, it's been the first time I've played the multiplayer in over a year. Because of this, I wanted your thoughts on if DLC, after a set period of time, should become free. If so, should it be free only after a period of time, like Titanfall and Doom, or at the start of the upcoming Battlefront 2? Are there any games that currently have paid DLC that you would like to become free? Thank you very much. And stay easy, fellow allies.
I don't think there's a law you can have for free DLC. It always kind of seems to be a decision made from execs that's just we need some goodwill here.
Right.
Let's cash in. Battlefront needs some goodwill as far as pricing out all of those things individually and what the value you get for Battlefront. Major concern with the first game, so very smart decision for the next one where they're like, guess what? Here's some stuff.
yeah, I feel like Battlefront and Splatoon and some of these others that are doing that, yeah, I mean, it just makes sense for that to be baked in to your purchase. You know, it's like yeah, you're not buying just like the game that's out right now. You're buying this whole suite of things that will be in the work over the next couple of years. I do think one thing in terms of things going free, I feel like it's a little bit weird that say a Game of the Year edition can come out and include all of this DLC, but if you bought the game a year ago, it's like, oh, well, I still have to pay more money than that Game of the Year edition would cost me to get that stuff. So it definitely feels like, at the very least, those things should come way down in price for people that bought the game on day one and haven't gotten into the DLC yet.
I do think a lot of times games are not inventive with the stuff that they put so much time in to make. Like, yes, you do have Game of the Year editions, but I feel like with a lot of games, it's like, okay, the game comes out, we're going to support it for this long, when we're done supporting it, we'll be done. And there are very practical reasons for that, of course, budget and time restraints and all of that. But I do think the age that we live in, the way that you can get messages out, the way that you can mess with digital storefronts, more games should take that stuff and find different ways to present it. Be like, and you do see things like that, but I think we can go even further. Like, oh, it's free for this month for this reason, or like you get it if you buy this thing. Like, there's no reason not to experiment, and there are so many games that I end up liking a ton, and then they just die on the vine for whatever reason. Maybe the initial marketing campaign wasn't good, maybe it was a busy time, and it's like I feel like we live in an age of video games where financial defeats don't have to be like, you don't have to reach that conclusion so soon. Like, you can put in that fight for longer. I just like to see that.
Yeah. Well, I think too, I think Sony's been kind of at the forefront of this with say, Infamous and now Uncharted. Like, if you can make that story DLC a standalone thing,
It's just you took the words right out of my mouth.
just
Yeah.
freaking do it. Like that Deus Ex that I talked about earlier. It's like, there's no reason for that to be a little pocket of Mankind Divided on a different menu that has no connection whatsoever to the rest of the game. Like, just put that out, and you could very easily get people to play through a smaller 6-hour version of Deus Ex, and then it's like, oh, I like that actually. Let me try the the big one. And I think that worked for Infamous.
Yep.
With both Festival of Blood and First Light.
It was interesting and a little sad to see the trend of the free-to-play MMOs, where you had like a lot of these big budget, Star Wars and like obviously Warcraft, but there's like other license, like Matrix had like its own. Lord of the Rings is one I'm thinking of that like when they went free to play, and these other companies that like that was their model when it first came out. It's like we are free from the get go, and then seeing a lot of these like bigger MMOs like kind of backpedal and be like, okay, well we're free now too, and it's a bummer that they couldn't have that idea and really build the game from the ground up utilizing that. But like, going free is something that I think every or gifting, to your community, I think is an out that every game should have going into development. Is that like if something happens where we launch at the wrong time, or there was just some technical mistake that happened, and now it's a year later, and maybe a game like Rainbow Six Siege or For Honor or like games that are still up and running and still multiplayer now have a ton of content included in it that was not available at launch. We just need a reason for people to jump in, considering that like a free weekend where it just kind of check everything out.
Well, it's
smart.
It's all about perception too, and it's all about combating trends, because I think the perception for games, for MMOs that start with a subscription model and then go free to play, is that they're losing.
Yeah.
And then like people don't want to spend time with the thing that's losing in a weird way. And I think like what makes the Doom thing so cool is very rarely do you see DLC just go free, or it's like, it's with this update you're going to get all of it. And so I think a lot of times people just follow paths that came before, when we're seeing so much value in striking out and doing something else. Like think of like Nintendo Direct, right? Where those have become events, and that was just flying in the face of the way that we did things before they existed. So, yeah. That was a good email. I like that email. It's an interesting thing to ponder. Our last email is a bit of a heavy one. It's from Sebastian. It says, Dear Allies, today I lost my job. It hurts, and as someone who already struggles with depression, this is hitting me very hard. Since I know all of you have gone through this, I wanted to ask you, gone through losing our jobs, I wanted to ask you how you dealt with such a difficult period in your life. What are the things that you were able to do that helped you from getting depressed? I know I won't be making a comeback as some independent content creator like yourselves, but any advice you have just for getting through the day?
Find a big project you can commit to. I had 2 big projects following the closure of Game Trailers. One was packing up all of our stuff, and the other was the X-Files. It was on, the whole show was on Netflix. And I was like, all right, here we go. I know I'm going to just be packing up boxes a lot and just like, moving stuff to my car and back and forth. And so just like having a thing that I could look forward to it was a show I had already seen, but like finding busy work that can just take your mind off something that isn't busy work for busy work's sake, but something that will help you, maybe like a project you've been meaning to do forever. It might help just kind of distract you from things. And having, I know it sounds really silly, but having like Mulder and Scully like with me, just to kind of like just something I could do. Oh, that's terrible. Oh, Mulder's had a really bad day. I forgot. Like, wait, I am having a bad day too. But just anything you can do to distract yourself, but not only in a bite-sized thing, because when you're done gobbling that, you're going to try to find something else, something that has like a little more of a length. That obviously try to find another job, so not something so distracting that it'll take you away from things you should be working on, but just something to just distract you for a bit helps.
I guess I'd kind of say in a similar way is like find that time of day that you're going to be focused on looking for a job, like just the 4 or 5 hours, like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to set out for today. And then like be okay with that. Yeah. Because it can be really easy to like just spend your whole day stressed out that you don't have work and feeling like you should be doing something. But realistically, like there's only so many opportunities and so many things that you can apply for in a given day. And the opportunity that you actually need might be 3 or 4 days or 3 or 4 weeks from now. Yeah. And so you've just got to kind of like take it a step at a time. It's like, okay, this is when I'm going to deal with this, and I'm going to do it constructive. And I'm not just going to sit around worrying 24/7 and like be able to do other things in your life rather than just sit around thinking about what your next job's going to be.
Yeah, I think both of you are taking the words right out of my mouth, because I think the thing that people struggle with the most, the way that I felt, like Game Trailers was a dream job for me, and then just having it not exist anymore, you reach a place where like it's so hard doing anything. Like even just like getting ready in the morning feels like a mountain. And I think you can just reach that rock bottom point where you don't want to get out of bed. And I think a good way of going about your day, like maybe you're not ready to start applying for other jobs. Maybe you're not ready to think about the future. Maybe you're not ready to like clean your room. So, and maybe in an effort to combat that, it's so important to feel like you accomplished something during this time. Mm-hmm. And that can start out as like the simplest thing. Maybe it's like, there's an email I've been putting off. I'm going to reply to that email. And that could be like your first goal, and then build from there to the point where you are eventually getting more and more constructive and more productive and applying for jobs and getting out there and living your life again. But just no matter what, find something, even if it's the smallest thing, and do it, and then slowly build and grow. And just that feeling of accomplishment will mean so much to you. For sure. And
if you do find a hobby or something like to keep your mind busy, I think it helps to have something that is around you so that you can see the progress. Yeah. So that even when you're at your desk looking for jobs or something, if it is literally your desk that you cleaned up, or the room or something that like that's around you and can remind you like, I have done something, I have made progress. My life is potentially better in some ways than it was a week ago, even though I lost this thing, which is so vital.
Video games. Immediately after games were shut down were that for me, because video games are a thing where you can finish them. Yeah. You can accomplish something. You can get somewhere. And so just like playing a game and finishing it immediately after game shows closed like felt like some sort of accomplishment. It was a good start. But yeah.
Apologies and good luck.
Apologies and good luck. It's tough. It's really, really tough. I feel for you. That's why I wanted to answer this email, because we've been through it, and I'm so happy to say that we're here now. But we're not going to end. We're not going to end it on a depressing note. I have an exciting thing to announce about this show. We're doing sponsors. We already have some sponsors lined up, and the way that it's going to work is because this is a bi-weekly podcast, so it's $500 to be an Easy Allies podcast sponsor, and then that's once a month, and then we will read sort of a description of your person or business. Brandon does this with things like what you have on your shirt there.
Sweet Justice right
Sweet
there.
Justice.
The sound
and
design company based in England. Sorry.
That's a special segment called Podcast Halftime. The way that we're going to do it on Frame Trap is for the $250 Frame Trap sponsorship, which you can find more information on patreon.com/easyallies. We're going to be bringing back a well-loved segment called Caught in a Frame Trap. And basically what it's going to be is at some point during the show, we're going to play a little game. Like which video game character said this line. We'll go through a quiz. If you're a sponsor, you will sponsor that portion of the podcast. And before we begin the game, before we begin the little quiz show, we'll read your name out loud, and you'll be part of that. And so that will be for any Frame Traps that month. So we usually do 2 Frame Traps a month, but if we have a special episode, Noodles and Broth, something like that, you will be part of all Frame Traps in that month. And that's something that we're doing.
Awesome.
So people are worried. They said, what if the secret word doesn't get said, or what if it drags on the podcast too long? Frame Trap can't be too long, right? I've already thought of ways around that. It will. We will. This. We're not just taking this exactly as it was. We're going to spice it up, make it flow into the show a little bit better. So that has already been thought up of. But the next Frame Trap, you will see the first sponsor. So starting in August, we're going to be doing that. And if you want to send an email to Frame Trap, if you want us to chew on it, the panel, and myself, email askeasyallies@gmail.com. Were you crying there?
I was eating.
You were
Yeah,
eating.
chewing it.
Oh, I thought you were crying. I was like,
Right.
Brandon wants to get out of here. But thank you so much, panel, for being here for 3 hours and 20 minutes. And thank you to everybody that wrote in. Again, the email address is askeasyallies@gmail.com. And we'll see you next time.